Sort of Coming Chapter 909. Above the sea, not long after the sword fairy dragged the moon together, a mountain fairy hovered in the air, and there were two large sword boats escorted nearby. Is huge, covering the sky and sun, just drifting over Osmanthus Island. All Xianjia ferry boats that can travel across continents in Bay of Pingzhou have long been requisitioned and seconded by the Confucian Temple and the Dei Court. The Osmanthus Island belonging to the Fan clan of Lialongqing is no exception. However, not long after the Confucian Temple discussions ended, the old Longqing Ying's family leased a new ferry boat with Iazhao and Lixiazu to maintain trade routes. This kind of thing, although it is suspected of opportunism, is allowed by the Zhongtu Confucian Temple, and it is not prohibited. This makes the few Zongzi Xianjia who can build the cross-continent ferry by themselves, earning a lot of money. On Osmanthus Island, there is a private house called Gui Mai Xiaoyuan. Mrs. Gui rubbed her eyebrows. She was really annoyed by that ferry chase recently. Jin Su held back his laugh, which was harder. It turned out to be the previous reunion at the Middle-earth Confucian Temple. Xiancha said some heart-wrenching remarks. Mrs. Gui, seeing him sincerely, gave in a little bit and said a kind word so that he could go to Osmanthus Island to sit occasionally. At that time, she had her own considerations. As Nanyue Dacian monarch, Fan Junmao fell all the way from Yupu stage to Longmen stage. Therefore, the Fan family urgently needed an enshrinement from the upper five realms, and the one who escorted the intercontinental ferry safely past Jiaolong for many years. The old boat of Go happened to be a disciple of Xiancha, and Mrs. Gui hoped that Xiancha could give more guidance to his disciples in their cultivation. But Mrs. Gui never expected that what she called occasionally was totally different from what Xiancha thought of occasionally. In her expectation, she received an apology letter written by the young hermit. At first, Mrs. Gui felt that Qin Pingan was too worried, but now she began to feel that if Qin Pingan dared to come to Osmanthus Island, she would dare to drive people directly. The small courtyard knocked on the door, no more, no less, just 3 times. Mrs. Gui frowned slightly, she didn't even notice someone approaching the courtyard gate. Jin Su was about to get up and open the door. Mrs. Gui waved her hand to let the disciple stay where she was. She waved her sleeve again and opened the courtyard door. A young Taoist priest stood at the door with a bright smile, and waved to the 2 masters and apprentices in the courtyard. This Fan family ferry did not accept guests who boarded halfway. Jin Su glanced at the young Taoist crown, which was a lotus crown, and she was regarded as a traveling Taoist priest from the gods. Only the Taoist priests of the gods, who wear the Taoist crown on their heads, will have both a fishtail crown and a lotus crown. It is reasonable to say that Hohhot Island followed the road to the market this time and returned from the wild world to Aquarius Island. There were no passengers on the island, let alone Taoist priests. Ms. Gui was silent, she just said a blessing when she got up. Jin Su quickly followed the master to get up. The young Taoist priest hurriedly bends over to pay the courtesy, and sighs after standing up. Fortunately, Mrs. Gui's appearance remains unchanged for thousands of years, making people forget the vulgarity. Mrs. Gui smiled without saying a word. The young Taoist priest swaggered into the yard. This is the girl Jin Su. It is a match made in heaven for Sun Jiaxu to marry the girl Jin Su. The golden osmanthus tree in Aquarius Island was regarded as the orthodox moon palace species by many monks on the mountain in later generations. It was this Taoist priest who went on a boat trip in the early years and encountered Osmanthus Island on the way. Traveling ashore in Zhozhou, passing by Jingui Temple, a handmade, ferryman, handwriting, and Wangpas selling melons and boasting. Xian is really idle. It's just that Mrs. Gui didn't think of anything. Lu Chen went to the Qingming world. At the beginning, he really had a little disciple of the Taoist ancestor, Bai Yujing, the 3rd head teacher. In fact, during that journey, Lu Chen also met the then Lord of the Gods, and gave some advice to a Taoist boy who had just gone up the mountain to practice. And that little Taoist boy, whose surname is Qi, is Shen. Jin Su naturally failed to recognize the identity of the young Taoist master. Even if the other party had identified her identity, she probably wouldn't believe it. Before the young Taoist took a seat, he looked around and asked with a smile, "It's not a coincidence, old Gu is not on the ferry?" It turned out that it was Lu Chen who had left the Great Wall of Jinqi. He did not rush to return to the Qingming world, but strictly followed the agreement with Lord Hermit, and must take a trip to Yunxia Mountain in Aquarius. And Bai Yujing's 3 masters' wind speed is so fast, it is simply, the tortoise crawls. Ms. Gue reluctantly said, "Why should Master Lu ask knowingly? Isn't it because he is not here that you, Bai Yujing, the 3rd head teacher, are willing to show up?" After Lu settled down, he tapped his finger on the tabletop. The meaning was obvious. What about the wine? Jin Su asked Master with his own heart, whether he should take out a few jars of sweet-scented osmanthus to treat the guests. Of course Mrs. Gue did not agree. She did not want to have too much overlap between Hohhot Island and the 3 Palms. The fairy chase, Gu Qingsong, who is famous in the entire awe-inspiring world, was it not Lu Chen who brought it to Osmanthus Island back then? Looking at the mountains upstairs, the snow on the top of the hill, the moon in the snow, and the beauty under the moon are all different situations. Lu Shen's 5 fingers tapped on the stone table in turn, and said to himself, 15 is a stunner in astronomy, Lu Chitzi is a stunner in the text, and Osmanthus Island is a stunner in the landscape. Ms. Gue reminded, "Teacher Lu, if you have something to say, I won't see you off if it's okay." Lu Shen laughed and said, "Whoever is poor is not poor, Mrs. Gue forgive me." Jin Su was puzzled. Master called this Taoist priest Lu Zhangjiao. Mountain Immortal Mansion, but there is no such thing as a sect leader, even if it is the founder of the mountain, at most it is the suzerain, the leader of the mountain, etc. After all, who can do it, who dares to do it? The Jianghu sect under the mountain does not lack the suffix of the word, but it is the leader, and there is no saying that it is a master. Unless it is the 3 Bai Yujing who are far away and out of reach, of course, they are now the 4 descendants of Taoist ancestors, they are eligible to be honored as a certain master teacher. Could it be that the young Taoist priest in front of you, who is scornful, is that Lu Chen? How could it be possible? I must have thought too much. A Bai Yujing teacher, how high above the sky, would knock on the door, enter the courtyard, sit here peacefully without saying anything, and even cheekily ask the master for a drink. For Jin Su, the only time in his life that he barely got in touch with Lu Chen was when Chen Pingon had personally painted a horrifying talisman in the Battle of Jialonggu. "What do you do?" Lu Chenji ordered. Lu Chen raised his head to look at the sky, and sighed for no reason. Huzuershan, Huzuerian. Literally, it describes the beauty of a woman's appearance and dress as a god. Mrs. Gue looked solemn. Lu Shen looked at Mrs. Gue blankly, but smiled suddenly. "Just kidding, you can't take it seriously." Ms. Gue said indifferently, "Why tell the joke if you are not serious?" Lu Chen's little chicken pecked at the rice, nodded and said yes. After eating hanging at Mrs. Gui's side, he turned his head to look at the suspicious Jin Su, and exclaimed, "Good name, Jin Sushing, Kang Fushi, Sichengao Guoqiang." The old dragon city is really drenched in the Sun family's light. Jin Su cautiously said, "Mr. Lu, my father's surname is Jin, so the master gave me this name. It's just another name for Osmanthus, which has the same meaning as that of Osmanthus and Guanghanxian." Lu Shen had a sincere expression, thirsty for knowledge, and asked, "What's the solution?" Jin Su smiled and said, "Just because the sweet-scented osmanthus is yellow like gold and the flowers are as small as millets, this is the alias." Lu Shen once again stroked his palm and said in admiration, I have learned, the world has no boundaries, and I really live to learn." Mrs. Gue couldn't stand the nonsense of Master Lu, and said directly to her disciples, "This Master Lu is the Baiyu Jinglu Shen of the Qingming world. How would he know that Jinsu is an osmanthus alias?" Jinsu was shocked, and quickly got up, gave a blessing, and said with a trembled, "Osmanthus Island Jinsu, I have seen Master Lu." Lu Shen rolled his eyes. "This is boring. Reading an unseen book is like meeting good friends. Seeing books that have been read is like meeting old friends." Mrs. Gui's move was a terrible sight, just like helping girl Jean Su, turning to the last page of a book about talents and beautiful ladies that she had just read. Lu Qin lifted a palm, shook it lightly, and said with a smile, "Lady Jean Su will have to change her temper of looking at people in the future, or she will only let Jean Su slip away." Many of them could have been held firmly in the palm of the hand. Of course, if the son is not a godfather, the teaching is not strict. Naturally, the teacher is lazy. In addition to the inheritance of the magic technique, Mrs. Gue will also carefully carve the jade on the matter of the disciples' Taoism. If it is said that the world is like this, I am just following the crowd, am I sure to be right? Surely it must be good. Pang Dao does not seem to be necessary. Just to say that, here is the real gain and loss, who dares to make a conclusion? It can't be that Jean Su and the people of the world are right, but the poor way is wrong. Lu Qinshu babbled, stood up, his figure disappeared in a flash, and left Osmanthus Island. Only a book of Taoism made of gold and jade was left on the table, glowing with purple and green spirit. After shrinking one step across the sea, Lu Chen stopped abruptly, staggering forward, almost fell a dog to eat shit, raised his hand to support the crown of the road, stood on his toes, craned his neck and glanced down at the mountain and river, almost walked the wrong door. It turned out that the Confucian temple only gave Lu Zhangjiao the share of landing on 2 continents, and then he was about to send out Bai Yujing's 3-head teaching ceremony. However, when Lu Chen returned to the world of Haoren next time, there would be no such restrictions. After all, a Yaoguang blessed land was sent out, and there was someone who did the real credit. Lu Chen stood on the sea of clouds, at the border of the sea and land under his feet, and hit a flyover-style boxing road. The 2 crackling sleeves of the Taoist robe could barely be regarded as the flowing water. Suddenly a golden rooster was independent, pinched, and full of nonsense after a spell of Dao Ju. He came to the sky over the old dragon city of Aquarius Island in an instant, but unfortunately the sea of clouds that was created by his own hands in the past is gone, a sideways volley rolls, and when his feet fall, Lu Chen has already arrived. At the boundary of Yunxia Mountain, he bent his fingers and tapped the crown of the crown on his head lightly, casting a blind eye. Lu Shen neither went to find the contemporary female ancestor of Yunxia Mountain, nor did he go to Weifeng to find Kai Jinjian, and he was not in a hurry to buy or sell. Lu Chen glanced at the scenic Yunxia peaks, and finally fell on the side of Gingyun Peak. In the vast sea of clouds, a mountain top suddenly appeared like an isolated island on the sea, and there was a man wearing that old Xiaowan robe. The immortal man, sitting on the white jade railing and drinking alone, stared blankly at somewhere, unable to shift his eyes for a long time. The bachelor man drank and drank instead of drinking the woman's brows and words. Huang Zhongho frowned, and another visitor who didn't follow the rules to walk through the gate. Really, Yunxia Mountain is a place where anyone can come and walk. Last time, I was a Qingshan guest who claimed to be Chen Pingan in the Luopa Mountain. This time he was replaced by a Taoist priest who did not know his roots and feet. It turned out that in Huang Zhonghao's field of vision, there was a young Taoist priest who could not see the Dao lineage. Above the sea of clouds, he bypassed Gingyun Peak and swept away. It was not the straight line of imperial wind, but a big step. The kind of moving forward and dangling sleeves, but at the same time as Yufeng, did not forget to look at the left and right. It seemed that the eyebrows and the eyes were not intent. Huang Zhonghe stood up, put away his hip flask, and performed a unique secret technique of cultivating yunfeng. His figure was instantly submerged in a sea of white clouds like a cloud, and he quietly followed. Only listen to the young-looking Taoist priest from the outside country, and he has a lot of words, and it is my generation to form a golden alchemy. What kind of haze, a golden pill, azure moon and white, high mountains and fast winds, unlimited clouds and water. Then I saw that Taoist priest reached a mountain called Fufing, and started climbing up the cliff from the middle of the mountain. He lifted his body lightly, but he was a little bit airy, his posture was as strong as an ape in a mountain. Huang Zhonghe has always been in hiding, to see what this sneaky guy wants to do. The young Taoist seems to be a natural stubbornness. When there is no one around here, he also likes to talk to himself. He stretched out his hand to grab a lily vine. The Taoist leaned against the cliff, shook the sleeve of the Taoist robe, and shook out a big pie. He stretched out his hand to catch it, chewed it, and said vaguely, "The clouds are misty with a few peaks, and the green hills are piled up with green buns, lush and lush." Good poetry and poetry, taking advantage of the prosperous poetry, the talent is like a spring, the momentum is unstoppable. Come again, I once talked to the fairy monarch, my mountain ancient spiritual soil, higher than Shumi mountain, the cave house hangs from the sun and the moon, thousands of miles of clouds and water wash my eyes, I can only climb the danger without help, dare to ask the guest officials, why is this? I was shocked. Tangmu, it turned out that he was wearing a true figure of the 5 mountains. Huang Zhonghe, who heard it in the dark, had a headache. There has always been no Fulifeng where the monks of Yunxia mountain lived and cultivated the way. It was a secret forbidden area. Even the ancestors of the ancestor temple do not know the historical origin of this peak. They only know that Dixian chose the top of the mountain as the open peak dojo, and this peak will never be selected. The crux of Yunxia mountain's current embarrassing situation happened to be on this mountain. It is rumored that the founder of Yunxia mountain, before the establishment of the mountain in Ao Pingzhou, found the ancient water control amulet and the undead prescription. Therefore, in the secret fairyland of Fu Temple Peak, there is the Yinfang Stone Room and Baiji Zichuan, which is Yunxia mountain. The origin of aura. Near the top of the mountain, there is an ancient Xianfu site with many obstacles to the mountains and rivers. There are 2 round stones at the door, natural stone drum-shaped, and the monks buckle it when the monks buckle. The seals are engraved with Shenzhen and Yunzhen. Huang Zhonghe was vigilant, because the Taoist priest came here by coincidence. Lu Qin looked at the stone drum at the door, sighed, and the seal was still fresh, but the old things of the gods and the immortal family's relics were gone. Farewell to the old and welcome the new year at the foot of the mountain, which is the new year, while the farewell to the old and welcome the new on the mountain, is the heart. I forgot who said it. Probably the poor self. Lu Qin turned his head and smiled, father of the Taoist cultivation Yunfeng, sneakily following the poor road all the way, in this place where the earth should not be called every day, is the Taoist intending to rob money? Huang Zhonghe appeared in figure and said, "This fellow Taoist, why don't you let me go to Yunxia Zhu mountain and see my master?" Yunxia mountain Zhanglu Weili is the preacher of Huang Zhonghe. Lu Shen waved his hand, "Forget it, your ancestor Yunxia is not on the mountain now, so the poor people can reminisce for no reason." Huang Zhonghe choked for a while. Yunxia Old Immortal is the originator of Yunxia mountain. Naturally, he has long since passed away. Through the opening of branches and leaves, several direct disciples have achieved the good situation of the 16 peaks of Yunxia in Aquarius. And the reason why Yunxia mountain is close to the Dharma involves a long history of insider, because it is said that the old ancestor Yunxia was actually born in the Xiankong temple in China, but he was not a monk, but a certain kind of magic. Lu Qinzhuishuk shook hands and poked lightly in the shape of a stick, smiled and said, "Mu Shangzhua, isn't it?" Huang Zhonghe didn't understand whether this Taoist priest was playing mystery, or whether it was true. Lu Qin Tut, looking at the confusion of your second monk Zhang Er's head, it doesn't seem to be a fake. It seems that the old friend Yunxia, who is poor, was embarrassed to leak her roots and feet with a few pros. In fact, what is there? It's hard to tell, it should be in the preface above your Yunxia Mountain Patriarch's genealogy. Before Yunxia's ancestor left Xiankong Temple, Lu Qin had never taken a boat out to sea, and had met with the monk Huanggran. Taoism and Buddhism each said his own words, but in Lu Qin's words, the Taoist real person does not demean the Buddha. The Buddha's dragon elephant also knows a talk, 2 cups of tea, and a happy conversation. The true body of the ancestor Yunxia was the walking stick in the hands of the abbot of Xiankong Temple in her early years. Knowledge, the monk held the wooden seat and once lightly tapped Lu Qin on the shoulder. Lu Qin didn't evade, he gave the Mu Shangzhua, a fate for enlightenment, in vain. Then there was the Buddhism case of Howren's future generations who beat Lu Qin out with 1 stick. Lu Qin raised his hand and made a gesture of raising his head and drinking. Huang Zhonghe hesitated, but threw a pot of Chuankuan wine secretly brewed from Yunxia Mountain. Lu Qin lifted the mud seal, sniffed, his face was intoxicated, and he squinted and smiled. It's a good drink. Huang Zhonghe said, after drinking, I still have to bother the real person to visit the Patriarch's hall. The outsider who trespassed at the mountain gate last time, he really went to find Kai Jinjian of Weifeng, and Huang Zhonghe didn't let him be reluctant. Lu Qin nodded, that's right, Pang Dao really wants to talk to your mountain master and uncle about something business. Someone will help lead the way, lest Pang Dao hits like a headless fly. Huang Zhonghe said, I hope that the real person will do what he says so as not to hurt his peace. Lu Qin smiled and said, pointing to the mansion gate, and asked, this is the most suitable place for feng shui to be used as a dojo. It's a pity that the gate has been kept closed all the time. Huang Zhonghe explained, the door closed by the second-generation patriarch, the mountain master himself, also passed a decree before his death. In the future, if we monks of Yunxia Mountain, if no one is in the 5 realms, we will not be allowed to open this door, and no one will be allowed to enter. Practice in the secret mansion. This matter is not a teacher. The secrets of the door are known to all monks in the whole continent. Many mountain forces who have a wrong relationship with Yunxia Mountain like to make fun of Yunxia Mountain with this matter. They ridiculed and deliberately said that there is a fairy-like town in the mansion. Jibao, as soon as you open the door, you will be invincible. Punching and kicking the gods are not a problem. Hearing this, Lu Qin was choked by the wine, wiped the corners of his mouth with his sleeves, and said with a smile, it's really a master who pits his master and his grandchildren. It's a good intention. It's hard work. It is nothing but hope that you younger monks can continue to work hard, practice well, no matter how you should cultivate a jade puddle. When the door is opened and occupy this mansion with great concentration, you may be able to create more immortals along the way. Huang Zhonghe was silent. Lu pondered for a moment, holding the pot in one hand and pinching the trick with the other. Since the person who needs to tie the bell to untie the bell, then the person who closes the door is necessary to open the door. Huang Zhonghe shook his head and said, after the ancestor master soldier was disbanded, he did find the reincarnated person outside the mountain, but unfortunately, the ancestor master was still unable to open his body. He stopped at the Dragon Gate realm, and he was relieved again. There will be no news after that. Up. Lu Qin nodded, and stopped deducing the way and way out of the second-generation ancestor of Yunxia Mountain. He shook his hand and said, the mud cow enters the sea, how can I find it? The most fear of monasticism is that there is no way out, and it is best to have a way to be a man. There are some old sayings that have been passed on from mouth to mouth. It is of course reasonable to be older than the elderly. For example, if one's ancestors accumulate virtue, they can benefit their descendants. Huang Zhonghe began to believe that the young Taoist in front of him was probably an extraordinary man with profound Taoism and a great connection with Yunxia Mountain. Lu Qin turned and looked at the surging sea of clouds at Gung Yunfeng, drank the wine silently. He was full of poems and songs, and he had accumulated too much. For a moment, he didn't know which passages and sentences to turn out, and he shook his arms around the Taoist friend next to him. Long experience. Huang Zhonghe mistakenly thought that this foreign minister who had a good face and returned to the original, was returning to his old home sadly and not seeing his acquaintance. Lu Qin threw the empty hip flask away from the cliff and raised his hand again. Huang Zhonghe was also looking at the magnificent sea of clouds over the mountains by his farming cloud peak. Hearing the Tao Chang coughing several times, he realized that the other party kept that lift. With the hand gesture, Huang Zhonghe had to toss another pot of Chuankuan wine. Didn't he really meet a liar who was drinking? Lu Xun said, "Many people don't drink, just because they don't like to drink. Many people don't drink because they can't drink." Huang Zhonghe nodded in agreement. The previous tragic battle that caused the mountains and rivers of the continent to sink, so many people who did not drink began to drink, and it also made more people who liked to drink stop drinking. Lu Qin nodded and shook the jug in his hand. He was indeed a good drinker. Sir Hidden Officer has a picking eye, which has always been good. It's not a waste of money to walk through Yunxia Mountain after untold hardships. Huang Zhonghe carefully brewed his words, and asked, "Really people visit this place to solve our problems and solve problems in Yunxia Mountain?" Lu Qin nodded and said, "Of course, Poor Dao has an old relationship with Yunxia Mountain. Poor Dao is a famous nostalgia on the mountain. Secondly, someone asked Poor Dao to get out of the mountain to help Yunxia Mountain tide over the difficulties. I have to come." Huang Zhonghe asked tentatively, "If this is the case, why doesn't the real person go directly to our mountain lord?" Lu Xun chuckled, "A worldly expert with a state of impoverished Dao that towers above the clouds, with a turquoise temperament and a pale heart, how can he do things with common sense?" Already regarded the other party as a land fairy in the game world, but when the other party said so, Huang Zhonghe was a little bit confused. Lu Qin felt that the fire was almost over, so he picked up the hip flask and randomly clicked on the mansion door behind him. With a word, it was a leak of the secret for Huang Zhonghe. This mansion, for you Yunxia Mountain, is actually a guard and steel. As long as you open the door, Yunxia Mountain will not only solve your worries, but also get a rich inheritance gift, year after year of accumulation of luck. This opening, Huang Zhonghe, imagine yourself, you have to be what a lot of luck. The only thing Yunxia Mountain has to do next is to lay a large formation to take good care of this abundant aura that bursts like a flood, otherwise it will be instantly stunned by the tide of the aura. What a big joke. Huang Zhonghe looked unbelievable. Can't believe it, is it really so simple? According to the previous avenues of my own patriarch hall, to solve this huge dilemma, it is nothing more than to start from 3 aspects, at least 2 of them. First, a monk of the upper 5 realms is needed, which is why the Mountain Lord has been in retreat in recent years, seeking a way to break the bottleneck. Secondly, Yunxia Mountain can become a sect, and it can be approved by the Confucian Temple, which can give more luck. Although it still treats the symptoms, not the root cause, it can delay the deterioration of the situation. Finally, we need a heavy treasure of at least a semi-fairy rank, which can gather and stabilize the aura of heaven and earth. Humanity, time, and location, if the 3 can be combined, of course it is the best, but from the current point of view, Yunxia Mountain is doomed to achieve nothing in the short term. Just to say that after a great war, the half-Xian soldiers are now almost selling at the sky-high price that was once equal to the immortal soldiers, especially the Jinshan treasures other than this type of offensive. The relative price was low in the past, but now it is even more expensive in Hauran. Rare and precious. Yunxia Mountain went around to ask about the relationship, went to other continents to inquire about this, but ended up hitting a wall everywhere, almost always the same answer: there is no sale. This is also the reason why Yunxiashin has not been able to make a move for a long time. Otherwise, it is possible to buy a half-celestial soldier by smashing the pot and selling the iron to collect money and borrow money. Lu Qin smiled and said, "Someone actually passed that Kai Jinjian a long time ago and reminded you of the way to break the game in Yunxia Mountain, but Kai Jinjian was kept in the dark and probably heard some hints, but she never understood it, you guys." The spectators were also unaware of what they were doing, so they couldn't get in. They ended up sitting on Jin Shan but almost starved to death. It's not that the person deliberately watched your jokes, but your Yunxia Mountain's Taoism is fundamental. It's close to Zen, and of course he can't do it too much. Otherwise, it's just superfluous, which is equal to unbuckling and buckling, procrastinating, and paying off debts, but it's not beautiful. Huang Zhongho's Wei said, "I implore the real person to speak clearly." He still didn't believe that opening a door on this Fufeng would make the entire Yunxia Mountain worry-free. Furthermore, the monk's violation of the ancestral precepts is not a trivial matter on the mountain. Lu Xun sighed, "This Huang Daoyu has a cheerful temperament, and he will give him wine when he asks for it, and he will give 2 pots as soon as he asks for it. Unfortunately, this mind is a bit bewildered by the drinking." Lu Qin had to patiently explain, Kai Jinjian didn't have a deep blessing in his early years. Didn't he get an expert saying that break and stand, like the help of the gods? What is broken? Who is God talking about? It's nothing more than the simplest break-in. The person who is like the help of the gods is of course Mr. Qi, the Confucian sage of Lizhu Dongtian. The reason why he said this idiom in his early years is who he can be if it is not Zhou Zi. The puzzle and the answer are given. Do you still expect Zhou Zi to hold your head and speak loudly in your ears? Huang Zhongho always bends down while listening to the man's words. Wait until the Taoist stopped speaking. Huang Zhongho straightened up this time, took a deep breath, made up his mind, and went back to talk to the mountain lord about the matter. The mountain chief did not dare to open the door. He came. In the dark, Huang Zhongho believes that this Taoist's words are not jokes, nor is it a sinister act to harm Yunxia Mountain. Even if both the mountain lord and the master are opposed, Huang Zhongho will only look for a lucky day, bathe and change clothes, go to the ancestor hall to worship the incense, make an oath of the heart, and frankly confess the matter with the ancestors of the past. If it is wrong, just ask for any consequences. Let me Huang Zhongho be able to bear it alone. Lu Xun nodded, and started boasting again, "I am a good alcoholic. No wonder that half of the poorer students who are not named want to have another drink with you." Huang Zhongho smiled and said, "Even so, the younger generation is grateful to the real person, but the rules are there. You still need to ask a real person to visit the patriarch hole." Lu Xun tut and said, "Good boy, the monkey is good, you must have a good road, and the poor way will put the words here today, 1 spit and 1 nail." Huang Zhongho inevitably feels a little guilty. This real person treats each other so frankly, but he wants to treat the gentleman's belly with a villain, and asks the mountain lord to personally check the identity of the other party, seeking a so-called foolproof. Lu Qin wanted to caress his beard and laughed. Oh, he remembered that he was young and didn't have a beard. After all, he was not as old as Dao Chang's son in the great profound capital, so he rubbed his chin. Pan Dao is a real gentleman, a real man. Be careful, gentleman generous. Huang Zhongho was speechless. Lu Qin lightly stomped his feet and smiled. Don't think it is a trivial thing to build a mountain protection array that prevents the surging of spiritual energy from escaping. Once the palace gate is opened, the momentum is not small, it is mighty, and it is equivalent to a big sword. The immortal asked Jian Yunxia Mountain indiscriminately, and if he was careless, the entire Fu Temple peak would be broken on the spot, but it was equal to the second questioning sword. The rocks were splashing, the flying sword was like rain, and the remaining Yunxia Mountain 15 peaks, and finally I can leave a few hills suitable for cultivation, and I can count on the poor road. Well, it's not bad, but most of it can be left. It is the aura accumulated in the cave for many years. 7 or 8 out of 10, you must make wedding clothes for others. Yes, it is estimated that within a few years, within a 10,000-mile radius of Yunxia Mountain, large and small, near the top of Xianjia Mountain, and the Huangliang country with a yellow beam next to it, you will sincerely send you something similar to the unselfishness of justice. Golden plaque, let's talk to express our thanks. Huang Zhongho heard of this, but he was relieved. Otherwise it was like a beautiful dream of yellow beams, which made him unable to believe it was true. Then the question is coming, what's the answer to this matter? Lu Shen asked and answered, throwing out the empty jug in his hand, and stomped again, it's in your Huang Zhonghao's 2 jugs of wine. If Huang Zhongho only gave a pot of wine, Yunxia Mountain would not have this treatment. The hip flask that was thrown into the air, and the hip flask that had already fallen to the ground, hung the sky and one on the ground, followed by Lu Shen stomping his feet. In an instant, the Yunxia Mountain boundary was surging, and I saw the 2 hip flasks suddenly. It is as large as a mountain, as if there is a universe in the pot, each with a Dao Qi ups and downs, and finally a yin and yang fish pattern is condensed, slowly circling, just covering the entire Yunxia Mountain. And the array is falling to the ground one after another, like a painting of ink. The long scroll spreads on the ground and then disappears without a trace. This vision of heaven and earth swallowing mountains and rivers is fleeting. In a Yunxia Mountain, apart from Huang Zhonghao's witnessing this magnificent sight, there are only 2 people who can perceive the strangeness. One is the green juniper peak Kai Jinjian, and the other is a young child who is staring at the sky, and neither of them rely on them. The realm depends on Dao fate. Lu Shen pointed to one place, and smiled with Huang Zhongho. That kid, with good aptitude, will have to grab Zhenjianfeng. It will be of great use in the future. You will have the next mountain owner to choose Yunxia Mountain. As for the next mountain lord, of course it is the golden core cultivator of cultivating Cloud Peak in front of him. Lu Qin moved a few steps, patted Huang Zhongho on the shoulder, and smiled. People who can ignore someone's initiative to persuade someone to drink, and then threaten someone to drink a pot and spit 2 pots, not many people. It will be 100 years at most, you can brag about it with people everywhere. Wait for Huang Zhongho to recover, the Taoist is no longer visible. Huang Zhongho feels lost, he still doesn't know the name of this real person. In the Lake of Heart, the voice of the real person resounded, the name of the poor road is anonymous. Huang Zhongho felt helpless. How did he explain the matter to the Patriarch Hall afterwards? And the benefactor who helped his family Yongxiashin survive the catastrophe, was a foreign Taoist with the Dao name Anonymous. The realm of the gods, the Taoist temple is like a forest, and the avenue of the ancestors in the mountain is holding a 10-year urn ceremony. But compared to the previous Taoist rituals, there are now 2 more rituals. Outsiders, one is an official from the Dali accompanying Capital Department of Ceremony who came to the Divine Envoy sect, and the other is a Daelu under the Chongshu Bureau of Dali Capital, who is responsible for recording all the Taoist priests who have obtained the exorcism. Lu Qin has no objection to this, but when it is bigger, it is nothing more than a clear rule of the king, a secrecy of the law, the rule of the law, and the rule of the king. Going deeper and deeper, it is said that after the rule of law in the country violates the prohibition and violation of the law of the Tao constrains people's minds when they first move in delusional thoughts. On the hill far away from the ancestor hall of the gods, in one of the humble little Taoist temples with the Huaguan plaque hanging, an old Taoist priest is leading a group of little Taoists, doing that evening class. Behavely, recite a Taoist classic, old rote, young hard to memorize. Lu Qin sighed with his head in front of the door, and walked away, listening badly, and shook his head and walked inside the Taoist temple after holding his hands. I saw a little Tao boy, sweeping the floor and endorsing his book. He didn't memorize smoothly. He always memorized wrong, just like turning a book. If he memorized a mistake, he had to start over and recite a whole page. Lu Chen didn't bother the little Tao boy. Independent cleansing, he walked under the tree and shook it lightly. It is not easy to be a Taoist priest on the fairy mountain. Many of the trees in the mountains are always green all the year round. The fallen leaves are intermittent, and there is no stopping. It is uneasy, unlike the Taoist temples under the mountain. Only autumn is the most tiring. After winter, you can be lazy. As a result, when the little Dao Tong looked back, the good guy, where's the bad guy, there was full of fallen leaves that swayed the ground, and the little Dao Tong rushed over with his broom when he was angry, and waited until the young Taoist turned his head. Xiaodaitong waited up, and he was definitely unable to beat it, so he landed on the broom and pretended to sweep the ground. Lu Shan asked with a smile, "Little guy, did you teach urns? Now that urns have been born, how many times have you added urns?" Xiao Dao Tong snorted, "It's not the so-called family biography or private urn, which is given if you have money, not to mention that you have no money. If you have money, can you sweep the floor here?" The brothers of the same age in the Taoist temple are not only rich in the family, but they have received extra attention from the master. They have never washed the latrine and toilet, so they can't do it by themselves. Now it's fine. Picking manure and going to the vegetable garden, practice makes perfect. A good hand. Lu Shan sat on the railing. Behind him was a small pond with some carps, arms around his chest, and said, "The Tao is drowning in dung, it's good." Xiao Dao Tong was said to have been sad. He raised his head and stared. Seeing that the smelly Taoist who did not know where he came from was raising his arm and bending it again and again, Xiao Dao Tong understood the other party's reminder, and had to lower his head. Go, boring and sweeping the floor, as expected, the Taoist said to himself. Pan Dao's tendon flesh is all the hard work of planting trees, cutting trees, and replanting trees all the year round. Naturally, he has great skill and is usually strong. Han can't get close to the poor Dao's body at all. Xiaodaitong whispered, "Master Patriarch is right. You said it was just a fart." Lu Shan asked with a smile, "Why? Isn't it all the same sentence and the same reason?" Xiaodaitong added gravity, sweeping the fallen leaves flying around. "It can be the same, of course it is not the same. Anyway, I understand the truth, but I can't say it." Lu Shan asked, "Is it similar to the phrase, 'If the world learns from me, it is like entering the way of the devil'?" Xiao Dao Tong raised his head, "What the hell? Which Gaojin said in which book?" Lu Shan smiled and said, "It was said by a Buddhist monk." Actually, Lu Chen already knew about Dao Tong's wonderful thinking, and the answer in his mind was quite interesting. It was indeed because Xiao Dao Tong couldn't say it. Xiao Dao Tong said, "You still know a lot." Looking down at the fallen leaves on the ground, Xiao Dao Tong slandered in his heart at the same time, that he was improper. Lu Shan asked, "What's your name?" The little Dao Tong was listless, lowered his head and swept the fallen leaves into the dustpan, and whispered, "The chief of the road called me Yu. It's the Yu of the Yusher. It's just that Xiaodaitong didn't say that this is the name that master helped to choose. Talking to an outsider is not guilty of talking about this." Lu Shan smiled and said, "I will give the urn in the future. Is there anything I want to do?" Xiao Dao Tong raised the broom in his hand and pointed to the direction of the Patriarch's hall, but quickly put down the broom angrily. He was disrespectful. If he was seen by the master, he would be miserable. The fine copy of the scriptures could be copied most of the night, and he stepped on the fallen leaves in the dustpan. Stepped a little harder, and then continued to sweep the fallen leaves. Xiao Dao Tong said casually, "We Taoist temples are poor, and when I get rich in the future, I will help the statue of thee in the Patriarch's hall to be gilded." It is a brand new clothes, too. Just put a layer of gold powder on it, it's fine. Lu Chen said, You are so sincere, and your ancestor master hasn't been able to show up quickly to be worthy of your innocent heart. Leave me as your ancestor master, so I must show up immediately and have a good chat with you. Sentence. The little Dao Tong was so annoyed that he raised his broom and pointed at the strange Taoist who didn't have any rules, and said angrily, I've been holding you back for a long time, it's almost enough, otherwise I'll call my brother to come and beat you. Xiao Dao Tong quickly added, brothers. Lu Chen was too happy. He supported the railing with both hands, shook his legs, knocked on the railing lightly on his back heel, and asked with curiosity, It's weird, why are you such a big mountain and so many Taoist temples? The temple of the patriarch has such a wooden Taoist temple, which is the poorest? Xiao Dao Tong said angrily, It's up to you. In fact, this problem, let alone oneself, is the brothers and sisters, and the uncles and uncles are very curious. I only heard from the master that a Taoist priest has 2 veins and wears different crowns, which is not common in the entire Haoran world. For example, if the little Taoist boy really becomes a urn in the future, wearing a Taoist crown on his head will be a lotus crown. With the gods, the Taoist crown of the heavenly sovereign is different. Lu Chen smiled and said, I know the reason. It is because Qi Tianjun received a kind of preaching favor from your ancestor master. When he became the sect master, at first, he was thinking of Taoist priests with 2 veins, and a bowl of water was smooth. Later, it was discovered that it was impossible to do so, and there were many hidden dangers. On the contrary, the Taoism in the mountains of your line became less and less. Later, Qi Tianjun had to change a little way, only to secretly relieve the incense of your line, and found out it still didn't work. As a result, the entire Aquarius continent failed to do what he wanted. At any rate, there was a Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown who founded a sect outside the mountain. It was not until very later that he tried to barely understand a principle, what is the natural way of Taoism. It turned out that he did the wrong thing kindly, and then finally there is a King Liangzong in Luzhou in Beiju. Lu Shen pointed to the big tree, all things are like grass and trees, with prosperity and death. The heaven and the earth can last for a long time. Because they don't live by themselves, they can live forever. The little Taoist was so confused that he would not talk to each other, lest he might show his cowardice. He suddenly asked, Since you are a Taoist priest, why don't you call yourself Apo or Tao? Lu Shen smiled and said, The poor are not poor, the thieves have money. Xiaodaotong is a little envious. I don't have any entanglements on my body, and I can't travel far and wide. Lu Shen waved his hand, You want to make a mistake, in saying that I am a cultivator. It just so happens that everything is a dog, and Tao is in the world. Lu Chen raised his palm, slowly lowered, and repeated the last 4 words, only with a subtle pause, The way is in the sky, down. Xiao Dao Tong said, You talk about yours, and I will sweep mine. Lu Chen asked, I said that the vegetation has life and death. Everyone knows that the big tree next to you is still alive. Then I am going to ask you, what do you think of the fallen leaves in the dustpan by your feet? Think, is it life or death? Xiao Dao Tong shook his head. Lu Shen raised his hands and hugged the back of his head. It's not a boastful thing. The most dangerous time in my life to talk to people about the Tao, TSK, it's really dangerous, I almost can't be a Taoist priest. Xiao Dao Tong raised his head and smiled. Was beaten by someone. Lu Shen said solemnly, You want to make a difference again. I was asking a very old and senior Taoist priest. Guess what? In fact, the earliest Taoist priest in the world said it was the monk. Xiao Dao Tong hugged the broom and blinked. Lu Chen showed a dazed expression, tilted his head back 3 times, and whispered, don't talk about this fish pond. He watched a pot of water, 88,000 insects. I and the Taoist priest have traveled together for several years in the world. During the period, I looked at the size, number, length, front and back, life and death, but I was still not convinced, and the man took me to a strange and weird world. The world is vast and profound. There is no universe and no universe. Regardless of possessions, there are countless small worlds, so many creatures, really like the sands of the Ganges River, and I am one of them. After a lot of hardships, spending countless hours, and successful cultivation, if I stay here, I will be there, just as Sai can make thousands of stars disappear, and raise your hand, you can make hundreds of. Ascension realm cultivators all die, and finally I start to travel far, and have been to so-called Shaoqian. In the world, I have seen countless weird creatures, and I don't know the past thousands of years. I have chosen to sleep and sleep, and I don't know how many thousands of years. When I wake up, the stars that seem to be unchanging in the past are gone. The last certain one day, when the sky suddenly opened up, I followed that path, as if engulfing half of the world's endless Tao Qi, spells, and magical powers. I bumped away, and finally was able to leave that place. As a result, at that time, Xiaodetong heard that Mr. Shu was telling the story, so he hurriedly asked, "What happened?" Lucian smiled and said, "Foresee the funeral, and listen to the next time to break down." Xiaodetong sighed and understood, "Just treat me as owing you 3 pennies, okay?" Lucian raised his arms and asked with a smile, "Ayu, if we get a bag out of a mosquito bite, do we like to stroke our nails like this?" Xiaodetong raised a finger, like a cross, and smiled, "I like to swipe twice." Lucian smiled and nodded, and pointed to himself, "That me is the redness and swelling on my arm that was bitten by a mosquito. I was crushed to death by a random finger." The little Dao Tong opened his mouth wide, and finally couldn't help holding out his thumb. "Good story. It is really worth the 3 cents. Lucian smiled and said, "That's why I can't break through. Master is the most tired and lazy, and he doesn't want to explain to me. What can I do as a disciple? I can only find some answer myself." The little Dao Tong held a broom in his arms, and was speechless for a long time. He only felt that the story told by Dao Chang was not too exciting. There was no scholarly fox charm, and no real person on the scene. It was a bit weird and sounded good. I'm not too willing to tell the brothers and apprentices. After all, it took me 3 cents. The little Tao Tong finally couldn't help but exclaimed, "Where does the Taoist master come from?" Lucian smiled and beckoned. "It's true that palmistry is a must. You, come, spread your hands, and help you see your luck." Xiaodetong immediately became vigilant. "This is a long line to catch a big fish, in the final analysis, or is it to cheat me?" Lucian complained, "No money." Xiaodetong asked, "Is it because you have seen bad palmistry, so you have to charge extra money so that you can lose money and eliminate disasters?" Lucian took a breath of air, his own Tao pulse. How come out such a prodigy? In the future, it will be a good material for setting up a fortune-telling booth with me. Xiaodetong hesitated for a moment, and finally he looked sad, pursed his mouth, put down his broom, and said goodbye to the Daoist chief, hit a door, then bends down, lifted the dustpan with both hands, and dropped the fallen leaves in the distance. Lucian sighed. The child originally wanted to ask his surname, but the words came to his lips, and he felt that it was unnecessary. When the child dumped the fallen leaves of a dustpan, he turned his head and looked around. The young Taoist sitting on the railing was gone. Lucian had sneaked up to the threshold of the Taoist temple, and waved at the old Taoist master who was shabby and endorsed in that robe. The old Taoist saw it for the first time, smiled and shook his head, continued to endorse, and for the second time he saw the young Taoist priest who was still at the threshold. Beckoning vigorously over there, the old Taoist frowned slightly, and his eyes signaled that he was temporarily unavailable. When he saw it for the third time, the old Taoist, who was the master of one view, got up with anger, strode towards the door, and was about to reprimand. In a word, I never thought that his opponent would touch his sleeve with one hand, grab his own hand with the other and pat. The old master doesn't need to bow his head and weigh it up. Alas, it's some yellow and white things under the mountain, nothing more, it's just lighter. The young Taoist priest took out another handful of copper coins, and continued to pat it on the master of Laoguan. The latter lowered his head slightly, his eyes narrowed, his eyes lit up, Turned out to be snowflake money on 3 mountains? The old Guanju waited for a while, and saw that the other party no longer touched his sleeves. He lightly clenched his fists, twisted his wrists, and put them in the sleeves without dialogue. He pulled the other party away and asked directly, "How about fellow Taoists? Do you know that there is a private urn for this autumn view of the poor Tao? Do you understand the rules here? The implication is that this Taoist private urn is no better than the official urn of the Zongmen. Now the Dali court is strictly governed and has received a private urn. In the future, it will be okay to set up roadside stalls, but it is difficult to make it to the elegant hall. In short, it is difficult to deceive the noble silver of the emperor, generals and senior officials." The young Taoist priest smiled knowingly. "If you don't understand, you can come. I just used it to show off those who don't know how to do it." Old Guanju sighed, stretched out his and gently twisted. "Tao friends understand the rules but don't understand the market, you have to add money." Old Guanju lowered his voice again and said, "I've said it, no refund." Lu Xun smiled and said, "Just add money, I just paved the way for you." The old Taoist was stunned. "Are you the long-lost father of you?" Lu Xun smiled and said, "Guess the subject." The old Taoist did not want to let go of this bully, and continued to persuade him, "You know, fellow Taoists, the Taoist Taoism of the poor Tao is small, but the quota of one earned student every 10 years cannot be escaped. This was set by Qi Tianjun early. After all, Yu is still young. There are a lot of uncles and brothers in the view, and it is his turn in the year of the monkey. The Zongmen Zhu Shirtang has strict assessments, and no one will be able to teach it. Once the recommended person fails to pass the urn, and the place will be lost in the next 10 years. But in this view of Chouhao, they are all their own family members and monks, regardless of the quality of the temperament. The ancestors said it. The rule is, if someone has outstanding merits, those who are superior in Taoism can also be promoted to the urn. I really want to say that we can teach urns by ourselves. It is not true compared to that of the ancestors of the ancestors, but the identity of the urns is also true. Well, when the time comes to wear a lotus crown, he will not be a real Taoist priest. These are not the idiots who came out indiscriminately with a mouth. What do you think of fellow Taoists? The young Taoist nodded his head under the view of the old view, but he just didn't pay. Urgent. Lu Qin looked at this old master who had cleaned his robes, and then looked at his heart full of thoughts to coat Grand Master with a layer of gold, and the entire Grand Master Hall must be renovated, how the scenery will be restored, how to look back, and look good. The neighboring Taoist temples came to show their presence, and in the future, they will be able to stand up a bit when offering their ancestors to their ancestors. After a series of thoughts, Lu Qin was a little bit dumbfounded for a while. Lu Qin patted the old Taoist on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Okay, don't cry poorly with me. I heard my grandparents crying, so I told Qi Jin when I turned around and asked him to open a separate one. The urn conferring ceremony gave us a real urn identity." Listening to this young Taoist priest's rebellious assholes, the old master was so angry that he would punch him in the chest. "Shut up." Lu Qin moved sideways and avoided the punch. It wasn't that he felt shameless when he was beaten by the punch. He was really worried that the punch would fall on the spot and it would be bad for the stereotypes. Lu Chen stretched out his hand and said with a hippie smile, "This is this." Tan collapsed. "Give me back the money." Old Guanzu's face was pale, he sighed, and he was about to find out the money that was in his pocket, and said, "The Taoist friend is stingy." Lu Chen smiled and said, "Oh." The next moment, the old watcher rubbed his eyes vigorously. The young Taoist in front of him, wearing a lotus crown. And that lotus crown, whether it is a true Taoist or a fake Taoist priest, absolutely dare not pretend to be a Taoist priest in the world. Who dares to imitate this Taoist temple without authorization, let alone wear it on the head without permission? What's more, Kiwagwan is still in the realm of the gods. Therefore, at the next moment, the old View Master burst into tears and excitement. He staggered back a few steps, and knelt down with a thump, and then began to kowtow for his patriarch. The old Taoist's lips trembled, and he couldn't say a word. Sorry, his face was full of tears, but he couldn't help it, so he started to cry. For so many years, from the incumbent master of self-qualification, and then push all the way up, generations of masters, as if they have cultivated the Tao for a lifetime, have only cultivated a big poor character, and the days are suffering. Lu Shen squatted down and patted the old Taoist on the shoulder. He was so poor that he could not touch the flesh. He smiled and comforted softly, I know, it's not easy for everyone." The old Taoist cried so sad that he finally remembered that he was squatting next to his grandpa, the head teacher of Bai Yujing, and quickly wiped away his tears. As soon as he was about to get up, he looked up and found that the grandpa was sitting on the ground somehow. The old View Master shrank his head and shoulders tremblingly, and sat on the ground together. Lu Chen just stood up and said with a smile, "After leaving, remember to wait until Qizhen comes back from the barren world. You go and tell Qizhen that Yu is now my direct disciple, let him figure it out by himself." Old Guanzhu nodded vigorously, and once again dazzled, there was no trace of his ancestor. Lan Shan traveled across the continent, passing by the sea between the two continents, looking down. Fish shape makes water, human shape makes Tao. Remember that back then, it seemed that I had heard a question and answer with my own ears. Mr. said, "The road cannot float in the sea." The student answered, "Why bother to study and then study?" Lu Chen raised his head and glanced at the sky, suddenly speeding up Yufeng's figure, stopped, and then dropped his figure, looking straight down at the mountains and rivers. Coming to the outside of the Patriarch Hall of the Patriarch of Mazongmi Mountain, Lu Chen only changed his appearance slightly. Soon several ancestors came here. Wei Yusong was very surprised, and asked softly, "I don't know, the real person is here." Lu Chen coughed, and said straight to the point, "That gift magic weapon given by poor Dao back then." Several ancestors looked at each other. Wei Yusong was the first to notice something was wrong, and said angrily, "Cut him." "Damn, how dare you pretend to be a real fire dragon and come to Mui Mountain to make a ghost?" That magic weapon, once the sect celebration was over, the previous suzerain had already returned it to the fire dragon in private. Not to mention, Zhu Quan said the general process. Her father, that is, the previous suzerain and the old real person, both of you push me. I was very polite, and the old man smiled at this. One must be given, one must not be accepted, one is hard-hearted, and the other is shameless. It is probably such a picture of the kindness of the senior and the understanding of etiquette. In the end, the old real man really couldn't get rid of it. He patted his suzerain on the shoulder, and his eyes were pleased, almost like Dao He Zongmen, who can be regarded as an old real person who divides the account between 3 and 7. The real person promises that in the next few hundred years, the 10 days of each year will be ignored elsewhere. Anyway, it is not suitable for a sword repairman to come here to ask about swords. Simply put, about Mo is just the phrase, "I am familiar on the road, you Maishan patriarch, I am covered." Lu Shenlu is so lucky, he deserves to be the real fire dragon. Shrinking the ground in one step, he came directly to the kingly Zong of his own Tao. It is a pity that the direct disciple is not in the mountains now. Aloft, white walls and glazed tiles, and hanging bells on the four corners under the eaves. Besides, there are huts in the mountains, even monks' residences. For a Zongzi head fairy family, whether it is the size of the site or the atmosphere of the mansion, it is indeed a bit too shabby. Fortunately, He Xiaoyang still has a small cave in his hand. Otherwise, as a master and patriarch, I will have a handful of bitter tears. In fact, Chen Pingan's success in Xiandan City is the most suitable for her female disciple. Beautiful lady, a secluded residence in the mountains, holding a whisk in her hand, complement each other. It's just that Lu Qin dared to ask for it. Even if he succeeded, he didn't dare to give it away. At that time, Chen Pingan would definitely be chased and chopped down, and it is estimated that there is no room for discussion. A sword light lit up in front of his eyes, not intending to hurt people, and the warning was even stronger. Lu Qin staggered, cursing, "Good disciple, dare to deceive the master and destroy the ancestor." The female cultivator hurriedly retracted the flying sword, and the person swayed and almost hit her flying sword by herself. If the sword was not retracted quickly, it would cause her to change from scary to murder. The woman said in a deep voice, "Do you know the consequences of a Taoist trespassing into the Qingliang sect?" I saw the young Taoist slap his head, and an ordinary lotus crown appeared, and hurriedly said, my family." The woman was stunned, a fellow Taoist. Lu Xun answered the wrong question and smiled. "It seems that our sect master he is the most important and the most distressed to you. This young woman's crown is named Ganji. Exactly half of a citrus." She rolled her eyes. "Is it an irony? Do you like poking your heart? Master is the most partial, and he is least welcome." Two senior sisters, they were a colorful elk and a nearby object at the meeting ceremony when they came to Master's door. They came to their side, well, just a few oranges. They are the most common kind of oranges in Yamashita market. At the beginning, she still felt that Master had other profound meanings, but it was actually a panacea. When she chewed slowly and finished eating, there was really no mystery. The only unusual treatment was that every time Master went out and went down the mountain, he returned to the mountain. At that time, she would bring her a few oranges. Lu Qin turned his head and looked at one place, and said with a smile, "Tian de Fu Yuan, even me, who is his junior, would be envious. Master is not on the mountain now, and she is going to Lixiazu for a long trip." She first informed her colleagues to come here quickly, and then following the sight of the young Taoist priest, Ganji saw the fence in the distance. There was once Mr. Li. I was invited by my teacher's father to the mountains to help them preach and teach karma. And before going down the mountain, Mr. Li personally planted some flowers and plants, including creeper, morning glory, and a bowl lotus in a small water tank. It is strange to say that it is an ordinary bowl lotus, not a fairy flower, but when the flowers bloom, there will be green water spring waves in the small water tank, and water will come out of the standing leaves, blooming 300 layers of beauty. Lu Xun sat down in the corridor, stretched out his fingers, and shook it lightly, and the bell shook, ding ding dong dong, crisp and sweet. A kind of fish love is different. Some people like to fish and eat fish, some people just like to feed fish. Except for the female champion Ganji, all the suzerains who stayed in the mountains have already rushed here. Lu Xun lifted his cheek with one hand, startled, suddenly remembered something, and asked, "I heard that the great sword fairy in the north, Bai Chang, has ever said something to He Xiaoyang? It seems to mean that He Xiaoyang should not expect to be able to ascend to the Ascension realm in Beiju Luzhou in this life." Lu Chen was just about to stand up, and at this moment, he faintly saw the fence. Senior brother seemed to be standing there many years ago, smiling and shaking his head to his side, and he was clearly saying something, and he returned to Bai Yujing, "Be careful about the future." In a certain questioning sword, you must protect your senior brother Yu Do and the Bai Yujing. Sword of Coming Chapter 9-10. Luopa Mountain, at the gate of the mountain. Chen Lingjun looked around, taking advantage of no outsiders, sneaking out a pot of wine, twisting his wrist, 2 more stacked wine bowls appeared, and tossed to a new janitor across the table. A boy in Xingyi sat opposite a young Taoist priest. One stepped on the bench, the other took off his boots and sat cross-legged. Chen Lingjun leaned forward, stretched his arms, and bumped into the young Taoist priest. The latter drank a large sip of wine and laughed, "Empty clothes and empty clothes." Chen Lingjun asked, "Brother Xianwei, don't you feel that you lose face when you watch the door here? If you're not happy, just say something, we'll just transfer you back to Qilong Alley. Anyway, the old chef is good for discussion. In just one sentence. The trivial matter. What silly things, hurry up and punish yourself for a bowl." Xianwei lifted his chin. "What is my character, Brother Jingqing, don't you understand? You can't hide things in your mouth, and you can't hide things in your heart. It's just an outspoken person who never compromises. If you don't like staying here. By the side, it's already been rolled back to Qilong Alley." According to Chen Lingjun's statement, Xianwei was considered a child of a handyman from the Ka Tupu in Qilong Lane, and he had been promoted to a child of the outer door of the Luopa Mountain. Even if it was not a step to the sky, it was not too far away. I heard that the first janitor of Luopa Mountain was a guy named Xing Dafeng. After that, Chen Shan's proud disciple Chao Sunny, Liu Baixiang's direct disciple Yuan Lai, and Master Zhou, who was the protector of Luopa Mountain's right, had been having worked here as an errand. If it weren't for the right guard to travel a long distance, this kind of good thing would not be Xianwei's turn. Now this heavy burden fell on Xianwei's shoulders, and of course it was the result of the strong recommendation of Brother Jingqing. In the Chaotu shop in Qilong Alley, without Brother Jia sitting in the town, it would be really meaningless. Coming here, regardless of the world and the world, it would be comfortable. In fact, at the beginning, Xianwei felt bored, but just by accident, Xianwei found a treasure mountain in Jing Dafeng's house. There is no end to learning. Now, let alone the rain and snow, even if there are knives in the sky, Xianwei can stay still at the gate of this mountain. Xianwei was a little bit upset for his brothers. The creation of the next sect is such a big thing, the mountain lord won't call you over. Not waiting for Chen Lingjun to find a reason, Xianwei asked and answered himself, "Yes, yes, we must have a backbone on the side of the sect, otherwise the mountain lord must be worried. Such a big family business, it is not appropriate to be a thief. No. If I say the wrong thing, I will punish myself for a bowl." Chen Lingjun laughed loudly and raised his wine bowl aloft. "Brothers are united, and it is profitable. If we both look at the door, the master can only put 100 hearts on it." A girl in a pink skirt stood silently on the other side of the steps. Chen Lingjun immediately assumed a hungry tiger leaping against the sheep. He suddenly leaned forward and lay on the table. He stretched out a hand to block the jug and the wine glass, turned sideways, turned his back to the side of the steps, and complained loudly, "Xianwei, why are you drinking alcohol? It's not proper. I can't persuade you no matter how you persuade. Let's forget it today. If I do this next time, I will be angry. Brothers belong to brothers. Rules belong to rules. Let's not take this as an example." Xianwei understood, without squinting, with a look of guilt on his face, nodded and said, "I blamed me for being greedy, one didn't control it." Nuan Shu reminded, "Uncle Jing said that the gate of the mountain is the eye of a person. The first impression it gives is very important. Therefore, it is best not to drink at ordinary times. If you are really greedy, you should drink less. You can stay in the house. Have a few drinks in the courtyard, and at the same time pay attention to whether there are any guests at the door. When someone is near the gate, quickly get rid of the alcohol before going out to entertain guests, so as not to let the guests from outside the country misunderstand the atmosphere of our lost mountain. While pretending to be listening with ears upright, Chen Lingjun secretly grimaced at Xian Wei. Nuan Shu didn't even look at the Chen Lingjun, and smiled at the young Taoist priest. Tao Master Xian Wei, I didn't say you, I said someone. Chen Lingjun was so angry that he turned his elbow out of the way, but he couldn't get angry with the girl, turned his head, and said with a hippie smile, I'm so idle today, I have walked to the gate of the mountain. Are you lazy? Nuan Shu said in a huff, Mr. Zhu asked me to give you a word, Wang Tinghua, the royal river god, just send a letter to our mountain, saying that I will be a guest at Luopa Mountain today when I apply for a drink. Mr. Zhu will let you figure it out. Oh, drink well later, but drink vigorously, who cares about you? After speaking, I left. There are still a lot of things to be busy on the mountain. Xian Wei looked surprised. When the little butler of Luopa Shen climbed up the steps, and gradually walked away, he lowered his voice and asked, It's rare to see Nuan Shu and be angry, what's the matter? Chen Lingjun looked sad, held back for a long time, and said vaguely, Little girl film, I have such a little misunderstanding with my Yujin water god brother. Xian Wei curiously said to say. Chen Lingjun became more and more embarrassed, with long hair and short knowledge, she knows what she knows. There is nothing to say, drinking and drinking. It turned out that the Yujiang water god back then, begged Chen Lingjun's side, and finally succeeded in obtaining a peaceful nothing card issued by the Ministry of Criminal Affairs. At the wine table in the small town outside the mountain, when giving the no-fault sign, the boy in Tsing Yi stood up at the wine table and said that it was a trivial matter. But in fact, Chen Lingjun had a dusty nose just on Weibo's side. As the monarch of Beiyue Mountain, Piyin Mountain is still the neighbor of his own Luopa Mountain, and he is also a friend who wears a pair of trousers with the master. Well, it doesn't matter if I refuse to help, and I also said a lot of deliberately disgusting people. It's really nothing. I had to go elsewhere to burn incense, and I begged for it anyway, and finally I had to take out a master as a New Year's red envelope for myself. The snake gallstone, still the favorite one, ran to Piyin Mountain again overnight, and spent a long time at the foot of the mountain. It was not that he was reluctant to bear the snake gallstone. I was really worried about listening to Weiss for the third time. Gritting his teeth, I always feel that I can't blame the Yujiang Shueishan brothers. I can't pick it up at Piyin Mountain at the most because of my little face. No one sees it anyway. I can't lose sight of Luopa Mountain and Yujiang. After making a deal with Weibo, it was considered that he had bought a card from the Ministry of Punishment with real money. After a few years, Yujiang Water God also came to Tsing Yi Boy for a drink. He said that he hadn't seen him for too long and missed his brother, so even if he left the jurisdiction as the water god, he had to ask Wang Tinghua and the Dali court for 2 guan yuan. Can walk all the way to Luopa Mountain, it doesn't matter, these are trivial matters. Then in the tallest restaurant in that small town, the 2 brothers were full of food and drink. Yujiang water god suddenly remembered something. He said that when he came, he saw the water temple of Taifujiang Yanghua and was a little envious. I want Chen Lingjun to help me a little bit, so that I can say a few words to the Dali dynasty, the sovereign state of Huangting State, so that several tributary rivers of other families on the border of the Yujiang River can be transferred to the Yujiang site. In this way, when Chen Lingjun returned to Yujiang in the future, the old brothers also had face. Yujiang Shueishan smiled and said that he just said it so that Chen Ling didn't need to take it too seriously. Chen Lingjun bit his head, and of course did not decline the matter. Uncle Chen did not have a "no" on the wine table. However, Chen Lingjun did not have a big deal this time, saying that he would be able to do it, but he still gave a large amount of fairy money, saying that his brothers should go to the Huang Tingwa imperial court to make arrangements. As for himself, of course will help to say a few words, it is incumbent. In fact, the face of Yu Jiang Shui Shin at that time was not so pretty. Chen Lingjun was just in a sad mood and didn't say much. As soon as Yu Jiang Water God left the town, Chen Lingjun bit his head and went to Pian Mountain first. When I returned to Luopa Mountain, I squatted on the ground to pick melon seeds to eat. On Wan Shu, who seemed to be suddenly resuscitated, Chen Lingjun said of course that he hadn't paid for it. It's just that in Pian Mountain before, Wei Boss words were uncomfortable. If you don't help, you want help. He also likes to talk about something that is not righteous. He said something that made Chen Lingjun feel uncomfortable. The rough meaning is to scold Chen Lingjun, that Yu Jiang Water God, who treats you as a fool, and you treat you as such a fool. Even after many years, Chen Lingjun felt uncomfortable when he thought of this asshole. It was true that he failed to help the brothers of the God of Water. Yu Jiang still failed to annex those rivers, so many years have passed. There is no revisit to the hometown of Yijin. Chen Lingjun drank a long sulky drink and drank the wine in one go. In Yujiang that year, Chen Lingjun never treated him badly. There's no reason to mix well by yourself, and you don't recognize your former friends. I just don't know if Brother Water God came to Luopashan to find himself if he wanted something, and if he could help to do it. Also worry too. Fortunately, there is wine on hand and friends in front of me. There was still half an hour left before Shinshi. Chen Lingjun hesitated for a long time, but did not wait for the Yujiang Water God brother at the gate of the mountain, but said goodbye to Xianwei and said that he was going to meet his friends in Red Candle Town. About an hour later, Chen Lingjun returned from Yufeng from Hongzhou town and fell to the ground. With his two sleeves flung up, he swaggered towards the gate of the mountain and opened his voice to the old brother Xianwei who was sitting on the bamboo chair. He smiled and said, "My water brother, I'm so stupid, wasting so much officialdom, and walking such a long way. Guess what, just ask me for a drink." Xianwei leaned back in his chair lazily, basking in the warm eyes of the end of winter, nodded vigorously, and gave a thumbs up. Things gather in groups, people are divided into groups. After all, they are friends of Brother Jingqing. Next time I have a chance, help me introduce referral. As a result, I will travel to Yujin in the future, so I won't have a few good drinks and meat. Xianwei now knows Chen Lingjun's temper. It is more useful to praise his friend than to praise him. With a big wave of his hand, Chen Lingjun sat on the bamboo chair beside him, stretched his legs and held the back of his head, with a big smile on his face. "Fart big thing, don't talk nonsense." In fact, I once asked the Lord in private about which day Yujiang Water God would come to Luopashan as a guest, and whether he could take a friend to stroll around Luopashan. The master smiled and said that of course it's okay. Except for the Zhulu and Jiaisfeng Zushitang, all are possible. The scenery on the top of Jiaisfeng is good. You must take him there. When you come back, you can follow Nwanshu. Say hello, help you two prepare some melon and fruit snacks, just say that I said it. It's just that the master also said, it's better to make an appointment with the two of you when I'm on the mountain, and let me, the mountain owner, come to do something, and invite him to have a drink. Master today happens to be not on the mountain, busy with important things on Tonggi's side. Chen Lingjun was worried that the old cook and Nwanshu would be annoying, so he didn't feel embarrassed to take Yujiang Water God to the Luopa mountain. If my master is on the mountain, see if he still goes to Red Candle Town, just find a restaurant over there to drink. But let the master invite someone to drink in person. Therefore, Chen Lingjun never made an appointment with Yujiang Water God. Chen Lingjun didn't want to let the master drink this kind of entertainment drink. His friend, after all, is not the master's friend, so there is no need. After all, I was the first to follow the master to this Luopa mountain. I know the hard work and difficulty of the master for so many years. My face can be worthless, but the master's face must be very valuable. Zhu Lian sat on the top of the steps, and Shanjun Weibo stood aside, looking at the little idiot with flying brows at the mountain gate. Before Chenling Jun, Weibo found the Yujiang water god who was spreading the message of the flying sword to the fallen mountain. In fact, it was the instruction of the mountain owner Chen Pingon. It seems that I had expected such an incident a long time ago, saying that if he happened to be not on the mountain, the Yujian water god would come to Chenling Jun again. If it was really just drinking, it was good, let Chenling Jun stroll through the Luopa mountain, and then go. There was no problem with having a drink over Pian mountain, so Zhu Lian and Weibo said hello, saying that he had agreed to Chenling Jun. But if Chenling Jun was asked to help again, then after Feijin sent the letter to Luopa mountain, Zhu Lian would notify Weibo as soon as possible, and trouble Wei Shanjun to block the door. If he can help as much as possible. Those who need to be converted into immortal money, don't need to follow Luopa. Shan is polite, it's just a brother who has settled the account. But I have to remind the Yujiang water god, let's not take it as an example. Weibo curiously asked, if Yujiang water god doesn't open this mouth today, Chen Pingon will really invite him to drink on the mountain. Zhu Lian smiled and said, of course. Otherwise, you think? My son is actually almost spoiling this Uncle Chen to the sky. Since Chenling Jun is stupid, the son is also stupid with him. Otherwise, he would not deliberately leave the position of the left guard of the Luopa mountain in the air for many years. Just to say that Chenling Jun's trip to Beiju Luzhou in Dadu took a lot of his son's thoughts. In Cui Dongshan's words, I just want to carefully mark out where I go to the latrine. Zhu Lian raised his hand, sighed softly, and asked with a smile, what did you do for me? Weibo twitched the corners of his mouth, and said with no good air, fortunately, there is no big mouth from a lion, but this time the evaluation of the gods of the landscape, the Yujiangshui Palace, originally got Abing Shang. I helped raise it to the first level, and was promoted to Yixia. The boundary of the 5 sacred mountains of Aquarius and the 2 Gonghaoshui mansions in Dadu in the central part are qualified to hold a 10-year landscape evaluation to evaluate the various landscape gods and city temples in their respective jurisdictions. A total of grades A, B, C, and C ratings, hanging in the air above A, in fact, is just doing something, unless it is of great merit. This comment is generally not given. Inferior A can be promoted to 1 level. Therefore, in A, it is possible to skip the promotion. Generally speaking, the Dali court is only in charge of inspections, and is unlikely to overturn a certain evaluation result. Unless it is a comment on the A, the emperor needs to convene a court meeting. If there is a mountain and water who is awarded the title of A, he will be dismissed from the court. The discussion of the imperial study room was put on the agenda. As for the second subordinate, only the Minister of Rights who was responsible for the genealogy of landscapes was required to contact Wuyue Mountain Monarch and Dada Gongho in private. Zhu Lian said, this is still a small favor. According to Dallas landscape laws, he was beaten into C and so on, so he couldn't eat it and walked away. If it is the most inferior grade C, you will immediately lose your status. In C, the gold body will be lowered to the first grade rank, and the grade rank will remain unchanged. However, in addition to watching the after effects, if the next evaluation fails to reach the second level in the middle, even if it is the second one, it will be lowered to the gods. I believe this is the root of why Yujiang water god dared to come to Luopa mountain to find Chenling Jun. Otherwise, the landscape of Aquarius Island, not to mention a water from the 5th rank of a small country under the Great Li domain, is estimated to be a high rank of the 3rd rank. If there is no incense accumulated in the early years, no one can guarantee that he will reach the gate of Luopa Mountain. You must be able to climb mountains. Therefore, who would dare to rush to Luopa Mountain as a guest? The reason is very simple. A Luopa Mountain, the genealogy members come together just like that. Who do you want to be responsible for hospitality? Is it the young sword fairy mountain master of Luopa Mountain? Or Qin Pingan, the hidden official of the Great Wall of Jinqi? Wei Bo laughed and said, I actually gave Yu Jiang a 10-year time limit. If the next big exam fails to get AB middle school, my Beiyue appraisal department will have to settle the old and new accounts together. Although I didn't say that directly, the guy understands it. Anyway, based on Yu Jiang's background, he really wants to serve snacks, and then take out a little family property from the treasury, and pour more fairy money into Yu Jiang and its tributaries. It's not too difficult to be a middle school. What's more, if you really want to win a middle school, you can still get a gold and copper money from the reward and punishment division. This account is easy to figure out. Yu Jiang doesn't lose much money. Zhu Lian joked, don't say anything else, just say that Lord Shanjun can show up and block the way in person. Whether it's a kind of persuasion or a beating, it's just a bargaining table that can't be bought for a lot of money. Wei Bo glanced at the gate of the mountain and couldn't help asking, you said, can our Uncle Qin guess the twists and turns here? Zhu Lian smiled and shook his head and said, he is a real fool, he can't guess, he won't think about it. Wei Bo smiled and nodded, I really want to have that brain, it's already in the Yupu state, and the tail won't be up to the sky. Zhu Lian turned to his family, it's okay. Wei Bo couldn't help asking again, I just don't understand what Chen Lingjun thinks. No matter how stupid he is, he should always know the points. Is he really stupid or pretending to be stupid? Zhu Lian smiled without saying anything. The old cook just sat on the steps, raised his gaze, and looked into the distance. Yunqing Day is uninhabited, searching Qifeng for drafts. Wei Bo remembered something, and couldn't help but say, the couplet sent by Luopa Mountain is really liked by Guangfu Temple. Otherwise, it won't hang in the middle with the gift couplet from Xiankong Temple in China. Zhu Lian smiled, and said nothing. At the Zen temple in Aquarius, which has just entered the head of the sect, there is a respected Buddhist dragon elephant, and the ascension ceremony was held not long ago. Somehow he found Weibo in Piyin Mountain and Luopa Mountain because of the relationship. Because the incident was rushed and could not be delayed, Weibo asked Zhu Lian to do it for him and present a couplet. Zhu Lian wanted to fly a sword to spread the letter to Xiandu Mountain. Originally, this kind of thing should have been written by the mountain owner for reasons and emotions, but it was really too late in time, so he had to imitate his own son's handwriting, and the son intentionally left aside. The private seal of Qin Pingan was in the bamboo building. Zhu Lian was supposed to take it whenever he needed to use it. After writing the couplet, he sealed the private seal and asked Wei Bo to send it to the Buddhist temple. The old monk who served as the abbot was difficult in Buddhism, and there were two Zen allusions to picking clouds and putting tigers out. Pick up clouds to make up for the dead, and let the tiger go back to the mountain. Zongfeng is like a dragon, and when he sees nature he becomes a Buddha. Climb to the throne of Dharma and roar as a lion. In the Millennium Dark Room, a light will light up. Wei Bo is about to return to Piyin Mountain. The case is like mountains and seas, not an exaggeration at all. Never thought that some of Zhu Lian's words made Wei Bo not only stop, but also sat on the steps. Some people read books and like to go back and read. Zhu Lian put his cheeks in his hands, squinted his eyes and smiled, and said softly, Chen Lingjun is the same, and so is your Wei Bo, but the content you look at is different. And when we choose to look through the pages of old books, we all like to read the most beautiful words. So even if the time has passed, it doesn't matter if the real thing is wrong. At dusk, far away from the vast mountains, light rain and breeze are faint clouds. His own number of peaks is thin and thin. After completely moving out of the Longquan sword sect in the boundary of the state, Su Shaoqiao took two newly accepted direct disciples on a trip, and Xiao Ling was practicing in retreat. As a result, Lu Xianying, the new lord, took Mizu back to the teacher's gate very rarely, only to see a big brother, Dong Gu, teaching swordsmanship for a group of disciples. Those registered disciples who were in the mountains a little later than Dong Gu and Su Shaoqiao back then did not leave those few sword fairy embryos behind when they took office. The ones who really became the disciples of Ruan Qiong's room, on the contrary, were relatively inferior. The two survivors of Lu's criminals were just young children from that year, and now they have become other people's masters. Lu Xianying asked, "Where's Tai Smith Ruan? Why didn't I strike iron on the mountain today? Before I came to the mountain, didn't Fei Jin pass the letter?" Dong Gu ignored it. In the entire Aquarius Island, the only one who dared to call Master Wan Taijiang is this junior. The two emperors have respected the master. One continent immortal master does not need to talk about others, but only talks about the former neighbor of Luopishan, Qin Shanju, dare you? So now the disciples of Longquan sword sect's re-inheritance, one by one, admire the patriarch Wan Qiong, who has always lived in Jianzhong and can't see anyone, because they have heard the elder Su Shaoqiao, who said a few words. Once she said that when Chen Jianxian was a teenager in a small town, he used to work in the blacksmith's shop built by our sect on the Longshu River. It was the kind of part-time job at the bottom of the mountain, and Chen Jianxian was on master's side in the early years, and he was very courteous and thoughtful, respectful. Lu Xianying coughed and reminded, "Brother Dong, the Lord is asking you something." Dong Gu said with a sharp glance, "I don't know what to say back to the sect master." The round-faced girl complained softly, "On Brother Dong's side, what do you have for the Supreme Master? Seeing outside but not seeing the outside, boring is not boring." Crying Nui didn't say anything from his heart, but deliberately said it to Dong Gu. TSK, now that I am so sophisticated, not to mention his proficiency, he can be regarded as entering the room. Lu Xianying complained, "We are up and down the sect, just a few people, add together, is there 50? Isn't it a bit shabby? Think I was studying abroad and had to line up when I was sitting in the pit." Dong Gu chuckled. According to the promise made at the time, Wan Qiong resigned as the sovereign and handed over to Lu Xianying, the first of the Longquan Jianzhong to enter the Jade Realm, as his successor. However, such a major event was only decided at a dinner table, and then no celebration was held. Pingzhou knew of this. Not many Xianjia hilltops, only the Dei court sent a ceremonial book, personally took people to Longquan Jianzhong to make up the congratulations, not many people, not light. And the first thing Lu Xianying did after he became the sovereign was to make a good opinion, went to Piyun Mountain to find Wei Shanjun, and used his great magical powers to help relocate several hills including Shinqiu Mountain to this side. Patting Dong Gu on the shoulder, Lu Xianying said earnestly, "Senior brother Dong, you must practice hard. My dignified Longquan sword sect's discipline is just a nascent soul. It's not plausible." After that, Lu Xianying took the round-faced girl and walked around the other hills. The two walked on the road in the middle of the mountain. Lu Xianying was wearing a cotton-padded jacket like her, bowing his head and holding hands. Otherwise, how would he call Mao Dong during the winter? The round-faced girl who gave herself the name of Yu Qianwei asked, "Why didn't he invite you to create the next sect, such a big matter?" Lu Xianying smiled and said, "I'm afraid I will steal his limelight. If I play, who will care about him?" Chen Pingon. Of course, Chen Pingon had already explained this to Lu Xianying. Kaiyue rolled his eyes. Lu Xianying smiled for no reason. The same person, enduring hardship and enjoying good luck, are two completely different kinds of knowledge. Kaiyue nodded, there is so much truth. Lu Xianyang sighed with emotion and stopped to look away, set up a vain heart house, with reason and material desire competing to be the master. After getting along for a long time, Xiaoyu almost forgot about this guy. He used to study for many years in Nanpa Suo Zhou's Tonruchin family. Xiaoyu asked, did you have such a good relationship with Qin Pingyan when you were young? Of course. Lu Xianyang laughed and said, no. It's a little weird to credit the month, isn't it? Lu Xianyang squatted down. After searching for a long time, he couldn't find the root of licorice. He had to give up and slowly said, it is said that the relationship between two friends is similar, and the relationship between two friends can last. Do you think the personalities of Qin Pingyan and I are the same? Xiaoyu shook his head, if you were as virtuous as that hidden official, we would not be able to eat a pot of dried duck bamboo shoots. Qin Pingyan has been careful since I was a child and didn't talk a lot. I'm so carefree. I want to say anything. I don't care if it sounds good or not. I don't care about it. Let's talk about it. The two sides met back then. At the beginning I got along with Qin Pingyan. Actually I also think it's boring. I think this guy is boring. I like to joke. I often punch and kick with my peers. It seems that this is the way to be close. This is a good relationship. Of course, I will pay more attention to strength. Qin at the time of Pingyan, I was not beaten less, but I was just joking with him, but I was not angry. Then one day, I was kicked from behind by a neighbor, who naturally was also joking, but I was so angry that it just happened. When I was in a bad mood, I had a fierce fight with him. Later, Qin Pingyan found the herbal medicine. I suddenly understood one thing. I have a problem with my life. Anyway, after that, I seldom talk with anyone anymore, but Qin Pingyan still often follows me and goes up and down the river together. I taught him some messy things. Over time, I got used to it. It seems to have become friends. When I was young, I used to play fist-smashing games with people, to see who couldn't bear the pain first, and until one side gave up, I always won. Qin Pingyan never played this. Later, he had a little slug behind his ass. But I like to play with me, fart the big kid, don't admit defeat, cry while playing, and resolutely refuse to give up. Qin Pingyan has to talk badly, so he persuades the little slug not to play, and then let me not play this with the little snot, that kind of big kid. It's just when you grow up, you can't stand a beating. For some reason, no matter what Qin Pingyan is now, what kind of person will Qin Pingyan be in the future? In Lu Xianyang's eyes, it seems that he will always be just the dark, thin, bright-eyed boy in Mud Bottle Alley. He will look serious when he does everything. He will look at each other's eyes when he talks to others. He will only squeeze when he is thinking about things. He started talking, I don't know what I'm thinking, and I didn't say anything when I asked, just like the whole hometown, where the days of chaos are in the present, those with hope are thinking about the future, the ones with no money are thinking about earning money, only the taciturn straw shoe boy seems to be alone one person, go backwards. Lu Xianyang sighed, anyway, the three of us have grown up. Once upon a time, the stream was getting shallower, the well water was getting colder, the locust tree was getting older, the iron lock was rusty, and the big cloud was drooping. No peach blossoms can be seen in peach leaves this year. Now it is, the snow melts, the green hills thaw, the water under the ice sounds, the yellow warbler under the leaves, another year of peach blossoms, and the best spring this year. In the night, one person sneaked into the Hushan temple in Suijia town. After this person entered the newly repaired main hall of the Hushan temple, he did not dare to wake up the snoring temple blessing, and tore off the snow-mud talisman on his body to prevent the minions of the city temple from being aware of the traces, but the man's palm remained the same. Secretly grasping the walnut that Senior Chin gave away, facing the painted statue of clay sculpture, clasped his fist and said, "Do you of the Ghost Axe Palace, pay a visit to the temple. If there is a lot of harassment, I will leave after a while." Diyu has traveled the rivers and lakes over the years. In addition to entering the Sevuing realm from the peak of the Dongfu realm that year, he also learned 2 talisman. The good old man gave him 2 pages of paper. Talisman painting tricks of the landscape breaking obstacles. Diyu is naturally qualified to practice talisman, otherwise he would not be able to teach the steel talisman and snow mud talisman that belonged to the mountain family school, to the predecessor of the sword fairy who claimed to be Chin Good. It can be seen that these 2 immortal urns are very different from the ordinary landscape charms used to prevent ghosts from hitting walls. A big bearded man appeared from the statue in the temple, floated to the ground, and asked with a smile, "Is it going to be a problem again?" Diyu smiled miserably, and was really hit. Before coming to the ancestral temple in Suijieking, Diyu had even stolen a trip to Tsangyan Lake and found the lake monarch Yin Ho. The other party didn't get into trouble. After hearing about Du Ye's experience, Yin Ho only said that the little Tsangyan Lake was absolutely unable to protect him, so he quickly found another way out. The Hujuan was still talking about loyalty, and asked him if he needed the entanglement needed to run. The temple is small and the hospitality is poor. The man waved his hand and drove 2 side-by-side benches from the corner of the wall, and threw a pot of wine to Diyu. "Tell me, what happened? I'm so mediocre. I definitely won't be able to help, but please drink and listen to you vomiting, it's okay." Diyu rushed along the road, exhausted and fearful. At this moment, he sat down on the bench, raised his hand to catch the hip flask, and took a sip with his head up. In fact, one shouldn't be here. Pay attention, it will cause the temple master to get into a landscape lawsuit. If there is a fairy teacher to ask for questioning, the temple will just tell the truth that Diyu has indeed been here, and don't help me cover it. As for what I have committed, I won't say anything. Now, it's fortunate to be able to breathe in the fire temple. The big bearded man smiled and asked non-commitantly, "Or I will let the temple wish to fry a few dishes of wine and food. There is a stove behind the small temple. If you don't like my temple to wish the cooking skills, you can ask him to buy some from the town. After supper, I know a few fly restaurants, good craftsmanship, cheap and good quality." Diyu hurriedly waved his hand. It is better to do less than to do more. Just drink it. Looking at the exhausted monk in front of him, the bearded man stroked his beard and smiled. "They are all the gods of the Sevuing realm, and are you so embarrassed?" Diyu smiled bitterly. "After drinking, I plan to go elsewhere to try my luck. If I can't, I can only go to Ao Pingzhou to avoid the limelight." The big bearded man nodded and said, "It seems that the trouble is not small. Diyu intends to be a dead horse doctor, take a sigh of relief here, and after leaving Sujieking tonight, he will take a trip to Duckweed Sword Lake. What if that guy named Zhou Fei with a generous shot is really the Jiang Shangjin who can make Li Jianxian remember? Back then, he took care of the nursing home for Senior Chen and took care of the infant child." Someone stepped in over the wall, speaking very unconsciously, and introduced himself, but he bends around and said, "The birth of Ginger, the admiration of Ginger, it's true or false?" Diyu cursed back at that time, "I'm your uncle Jiang Shangjin. It's just that the only thing similar to that Jiang Shangjin is rich." The meeting gift given to Diyu back then was a golden strategist Zhouan. It was actually the golden Wujia who is priceless and priceless on the mountain. What if it's really that Jiang Sangjin? On the whole continent, it is said that the female sword fairy Li Kai of Duckweed Sword Lake is not a Taoist couple, then Jiang Shangjin is better than a Taoist couple. The problem now is that even if he can walk to the Duckweed Sword Lake alive, how to meet Li Jiangxian's face is a big trouble. The big bearded man smiled and said, "Come to me first, even if you find it right." Diyu was confused. The man shook the jug, and the old was saying, Chen Jianxian has been here before. It seems that he has expected something to happen today. Well, I can't say that. It is Chen Jianxian's precaution. He asked me to help me give some words to him. You. As soon as he heard that it was the good senior, Du was immediately shocked and relieved. Even if he couldn't solve his urgent need, when his life was the most desolate, Du seemed to just listen to a few conversations by others, and handed out a scoop of water when he was thirsty. The big bearded man laughed and said, as long as it is a matter of Zhongli that makes you feel clear, you should go to the Golden Crow Palace, which is not too far away from here, and seek help from the sword fairy Lu Jiqing. If you feel that Lu Jiqing's swordsmanship is not enough. A nascent soul realm sword repairer still can't solve the trouble, so I went to the Taihui sword sect to find the Lord Lu Jinglong. If the trouble is so great that you feel that even Lu Jinglong can't get it right, let you go directly to Litafang and find the real fire dragon. No matter who you find, just say that your name is Du, a friend from the rivers and lakes that Qinharan met in Suijiaking, and you will definitely be able to drink. This is just a way. If the situation is urgent and the situation is difficult, there is another way to hold Buddha's feet temporarily. You can find someone nearby. For example, you can go to the Bone Beach to find the Phi Ma Zong on the southernmost part of a continent, and go to Mui Mountain. Look for Zhuquan, or Wei Yusong, Du Wenxi and others, and find any one of them. In the middle of the continent, look for Jidu Lingyuan Gong Shenlin, or Longting Holy Yuan, in addition to Yun Shangqing Shenzhenza, in the southeast. Chunlapu Tangxi, Song Lanqiao, etc., Kaik Mansion Sun Qing, Wuyu, etc. are all okay. If you are not particularly anxious and can't travel far, send a letter to any of the above-mentioned mountain flying swords. Just remember to write in the envelope regarding the sender of the letter. You should use your hands and feet to find someone to pretend to be, so that the secret letter will not be left on the side and delay things in vain. Chen Jianxian also said something. The reason why he didn't leave you a letter through Ghost Axe Palace with these things was because he was worried that it would stretch your courage and it would not be a good thing for you. Like you always do. That way, it's good to be courageous and walk the rivers and lakes as much as possible, so you can try not to cause trouble. So Chen Jianxian finally drank and said with me a smile, I hope I won't have a chance to tell you this, but if there is such a day, it would be like seeing you today. Du also let you not be afraid of things and rely on friends when you go out. Anyway, his friend is your friend of Du. Looking at the dumbfounded fool, the big bearded man laughed and said, I'm dumbfounded. Normally, I also think Chen Jianxian is telling a joke. To say that he knew Lu Jianxian of the Golden Crow Palace, the sect master Lu of the Taihui sword sect, he believed. But if you go to Potty Peak, you only need to report your name, and you can ask the real fire dragon to help. I really don't believe it. Do you think you are the great master of Dragon Tiger Mountain? Or the master Wensheng who stopped Beiju Luzhou's cross-sea sword repair? Or is your kid very familiar with Zhao Tianshi and Wensheng? But the old man at the wine table is still a young sword fairy, drinking some wine, talking big, bragging, and not breaking the law. Du swallowed and asked, that good senior, what is his last name? The bearded man was a little speechless. He was stunned. He pointed to the soldier cultivator in front of him, and said angrily, Du, you are really a talent. After staying with that sword fairy for so long, he has the same virtue as himself, only knowing the other's surname is Qin. Du, and the young sword fairy are a real tribulation together. Back then, there was such a big commotion in Suijia town, and it all took over the catastrophe. Du was a little embarrassed. He really didn't know more. The senior sword fairy walked the rivers and lakes, and liked to call himself Good Man Qin. In the early years, a girl named Jing Qian and a scholar named Li Huai seemed to have gone to the Ghost Axe Palace to find themselves, but Diyu was not on the mountain at the time. Later, I heard about it and didn't think much about it. Later, there was a young woman with the same name and surname. In the Daduan dynasty of China, there were 4 rounds of boxing with Chao Ci. Of course, Diyu had heard some gossip about the arena, but didn't think much about it. Otherwise, why do you still make Diyu think? Is that Jing Qian who can challenge Chao Ci, or the girl who has taken the initiative to find herself? Diyu finished drinking a pot of wine, courageous, and left with a fist. The bearded man didn't hold him back either. He smiled with a fist. A good trip. Remember to come back for a drink when you have time. You can get 3 sticks of incense. After quietly leaving Suijia town, Diyu tried his best to choose those inaccessible wilderness and ridges along the way, bypassing many mountain sects and Xianjia ferry crossings, and finally reached the gate of Jinhua Palace Mountain. Diyu bit his scalp and self-registered, Ghost Palace Diyu, please see Lu Jianxian. The monk in the concierge knows the Ghost Axe Palace and this military monk named Diyu. After all, Duyu's parents are the sons of the pair of mountain Taoists in the kingdom of Jinduo, but they have only heard of it. Brother Jinhua Palace smiled and said, even if your parents are here, you won't see our Uncle Lu. The master uncle in my own family can't be seen by anyone who wants to. It is universally acknowledged that the Yuaning realm sword fairy in Luzhou, Beiju, is of heavier weight, second only to the Yuaning realm sword repair of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and it is not mixed with water. The porter monk waved his hand and said, Diyu, let's go, don't be boring, and don't make me scolded. Uncle Lu sure is notoriously weak in temperament and far away from the world. Except in his early years on the Yuyinjia side of Chunlu Garden, he met a young sword fairy from a foreign country. The relationship between the 2 parties is very good. Besides, there are almost no friends on the mountain. Perhaps Sect Master Lu of Taihui Jianzong had to be counted as one. Uncle Master had visited Pianran Peak and it was rumored that both parties had drunk. Of course, they lost. Sect Master Liu's drinking capacity is invincible, and everyone knows it. Therefore, let alone Diyu, the mountain relationship of the palace lord of the Ghost Axe Palace can't reach his Uncle Lu. Diyu scratched his head anxiously, this fairy teacher, help, I have a friend who is Lu Jiangxian's friend, so I can come to Lu Jianxian if I have something to do. The concierge said with a smile, I have a friend of a friend's friend who knows a disciple of Zixuanfang's line, and this Taoist priest is Yuan Zhenjin's disciple, then I am friends with Yuan Zhenjuan. Diyu was really gone. Just about to open his voice and call Lu Jiqing's name, the concierge raised his hand and pointed to the lightning thundercloud in the sky. He smiled and reminded, Diyu, please don't be a fool. The rules of our Golden Crow Palace are all over there. Diyu walked out a few steps, turned his head and looked around. He didn't even know that Lu Jianxian was practicing on the top of the Golden Crow Palace, and he didn't want to leave. So he squatted far on the roadside and slapped himself severely, making you like to be nosy. Without the skills of Senior Qin, he prefers to be strong and do good deeds. If it doesn't work, I can only take a trip to the Duckweed Sword Lake. I am afraid of repeating the same mistakes and continue to eat closed doors. A ray of sword light quietly left the top of the Golden Crow Palace, came to Duyu's side, and asked, Are you Diyu? Diyu raised his head with a dazed look. The young man came with a golden hairpin on his head and was wearing a white jade robe. Diyu wondered, Are you? Is it a direct disciple of the Golden Crow Palace who passed the mountain gate? The man opened the door and said, My name is Lu Jiqing, and I am the one you are looking for. Diyu hurriedly got up and was about to say something polite. Lu Jiqing had already said, Let's talk, I want to find someone in which mountain to trouble. Diyu was stunned on the spot. Did this Lu Jianxian not ask what happened? Since you are Chen Pingan's friend, I can trust you. About Imo was to see through Du Ye's mind. Lu Jiqing twitched at the corner of his mouth, probably even smiling. Since you are willing to come to me, you can trust my swordsmanship, so just lead the way. For so many years, Du has been wandering around the rivers and lakes. During this period, he has only returned to the Ghost Axe Palace twice, once for the Mountain Gate celebration, and once for the birthday of his mother. Du has always been uninterested in the feats and deeds of the mountain. Anyway, they are all things that are beyond my reach. It's good to be confused by my own affairs. Could it be that the real name of the good man Qin, Senior Sword Immortal, is Qin Pingan? The name is not too silly, but it's good. It's just why in Beiju Luzhou, it seems that you have never heard of this name. No matter how many sword repairs in Beiju Luzhou, no matter how much sword repair is like a cloud, with the realm and swordsmanship of Senior Qin, Du is no longer lazy to spend money on the Shanshui Mansion report, and no longer likes to go to Xianjia Ferry. How could he have heard of it? Anyway, Du didn't plan to get close to the gods on the mountain in his life. What did Lao Tzu spend the wrong money for? Is it good to drink flower wine? Although Du would still take the Xianjia Ferry once in a while, he just lived in the cheapest room. Apart from the ferry fee, there would never be any additional expenses. He wanted to earn my ferry money and dreamed about it. A snowflake money is 1,000 taels of silver. I can't be a rich man in any country at the foot of the mountain. Du asked cautiously. Lu Jianxian, Senior Qin mentioned me. Lu Jiqing nodded. Of course, you are his friend and saved him. Having said that, Lu Jiqing couldn't help but take a closer look at Du, the one who saved Qin Pingan. If this were to be spread out, it would only be said that in the northern province of Luzhou, where swordsmanship is like a cloud, this Ghost Axe Palace soldier monk has a lot of amulets and life-saving charms. The only problem is that those sword repairmen who have been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi may not be willing to believe that a soldier monk in the Sevuing realm will save the life of the hermit. No matter how thick Du Ye's face is, he can't suffer live. Where does Senior Qin need him to save? He had a brain fever that year and went to meet Senior Qin, who was recovering from his injuries. Qin Jianxian is also true. On his friend's side, he is willing to say that there are none, and he is not afraid of being laughed at by his friends. But it's also right, it seems to be something good seniors would do. I'm afraid this is why I was able to meet Qin Jianxian in the rivers and lakes under the mountain. Lu Jiqing asked, is it a disaster caused by meddling? Du was a little embarrassed and hummed softly. Lu Jiqing squinted his eyes and patted Du on the shoulder. Very well, starting from today, welcome to come here as a guest. Du was both frustrated and honored, so he had to say politely, don't dare. Lu Jiqing, huh? Du immediately saw the wind and the rudder. Dare, why not dare? Lu Jianxian dare to recognize me as a friend, why don't I dare to climb Lu Jianxian? Lu Jiqing endured it. Very good, at first glance it is Qin Pingan's quack friend. Afterwards, Du and Lu Jiqing explained the cause of the trouble, which was related to the wealthy Qianglin sect. Money can help God. Qianglin zoned for so many years, under the guise of hunting down the remnants of the wild monsters, hunting down the mountains and the spirits, various mountains and waters, selling for profit and earning a lot of money, like that Tongyi's house Xiaolong. Compared with Qiu's creation of a wild garden, it is nothing short of inferior, with awkward methods, and almost no profit. Kaiyanglinzong's mountain allies and business partners are all over one continent, and the more shallow the mountaintop sect, the more cross-country, the more fierce the money-making methods are. Moreover, gathering people in groups by type will be the first to look at Kaiyanglinzong. It is conceivable that the Mountain Immortal Mansion and the Jianghu School are all things that can't come out of the eyes of money. Therefore, many local monster monks who are indisputable in the world have been hurt by the fish, but the Kaiyanglinzong monks have hidden their tricks and shot so fast, it's hard to be caught by outsiders. It happened that Du was floating on the rivers and lakes, and he met one of the demonic monks of the lower 5 realms. He was a simple-minded young man. He guarded a townhouse all the year round. He occasionally went to the Sky Bridge to hear about books and go shopping. In fact, that little spirit just within a few years of the successful refining, Diyu rescued the boy twice. With the golden crow armor on his body, he prevented two groups of monks from chasing after him. In the end, he could not save the boy. Because for the last time, a protagonist of Kaiyanglanzong's Patriarch Tang's protagonist appeared in person. He was an extremely young Jindan Dixian. I heard that he was the proud disciple of Kaiyanglanzong's Patriarch, if it weren't for the other party's fear of Diyu. Diyu, who had been splashed with a big bucket of dirty water, couldn't escape that walnut. The young Jindan was meticulous in his thoughts and acted fiercely. He had already arranged the roots and feet of the little spirit and the evidence of sheltering a wild monster race. The little spirit had no experience in the arena, and he didn't want to hurt Diyu, so he was stupid and took the initiative to plead guilty. Now he doesn't know his life or death. Diyu only knows that the boy was taken to a hill where the Cheonglin clan belongs to. Diyu felt that this was wrong, and there was no such reason in the world. In that battle, the wild world did not reach Luzhou in North Ju, and was blocked by the Dali cavalry in the middle of Aquarius Island. There were indeed some wild monster monks running around, but Taihui Sword Sect and Duckweed Sword Lake, the monks, including King Liangzong, had been tightly guarded on the coastal boundaries of a continent. Duyu's eyes reddened when he thought of this. It is not only his own experience, but also affects his parents and Ghost Axe Palace. That guy once threatened to go to Ghost Axe Palace in person. On the way to escape, Diyu occasionally regretted it. He had known that he would not be in a mess and be a good person. So what kind of friend Lu Jianxian said today, Diyu felt quite uncomfortable. With such a low level and such a bad temperament, Jianxian is willing to make friends with such a friend, and I, Diyu, have no face to admit. It's Cheonglinzong. Then I have to call one or two swordsmen to go with him. Lu Jiqing squinted his eyes and said, "It is not difficult for me to openly ask the sword in my current state. It is difficult to cut down to the other party's patriarchal." Diyu was frightened when he heard it. In fact, he was just asking for justice. Just let Cheonglinzong let go of that spirit. It's best to let that young earth fairy stop pestering him, and Cheonglinzong should not take revenge on Ghost Axe Palace afterwards. Otherwise, with Kaiyanglanzong's vast magical powers, you only need to be secretive, and Ghost Axe Palace will be in trouble within a few years, and it will be like a mountain. Lu Jiqing clearly knew Duyu's thoughts and said, "Diyu, you don't need to show up to ask the sword. The matter will definitely be solved for you. As long as the little spirit is not dead for a while, it will definitely be saved, but if it is already dead, just ask for justice for you. For this, you have to be mentally prepared. Besides, if there are any sequelae, just leave it to Qin Pingon to solve it. He is best at cleaning up mess. I can guarantee him that he will never hurt ghosts." Axe Palace. Diyu shook his head and said tentatively, "You really don't need to ask the sword. As long as Lu Jianxian helps to plead, I don't want to come to Cheonglinzong to forcefully leave behind a ghost of the lower 5 realms. I'm willing to spend money at that time. I don't want to have a hard time going around and intercede with Cheonglinzong." Lu Jiqing said, "Diyu, those with a low level will listen to those with a high level." Diyu felt helpless. The sword immortal was the sword immortal, and his words were domineering. Seeing Diyu taking it seriously, Lu Jiqing explained, "It's a joke." Diyu had no choice but to say, "The younger generation can hear it." Lu Jiqing said, "Don't worry, I won't act recklessly." After that, Lu Jiqing took Diyu back to his mountain and asked Diyu to wait for a while. Lu Jiqing sent 2 letters to the Duckweed Sword Lake and Taihui Sword Sect respectively. After embarking on the boat, Lu Jiqing reminded, "Diyu, we are going to 2 places next. During this period, you should consolidate your chi to heal your wounds. Don't be distracted. During this period of time, let's run away in a hurry. Your mind is a little damaged. If you don't pay attention, it will become a flaw in the Tao mind. In the future, whether it is to condense a pill or to conceive a nascent infant, you will have a lot of trouble. The sky is difficult. It is said that the heart demon is like a spring grass, which grows in the gap between the heart and mind, and can ventilate with the heart and mountains. Unknowingly it will occupy the magpie's nest. If the heart demon continues to be nourished, it will eventually become a tall one. The demon is a 10-foot tall transfiguration demon. Therefore, the more old you are, the more reclusive, the more sitting and the more dead, the easier it is to decay in form and spirit, and the root cause is here. Lu Jiqing handed to you a porcelain bottle with a few immortal pills that calmed the nerves. It was not a good elixir. It was the standard equipment passed down by the ancestor of the Golden Crow Palace. Lu Jiqing said, every time you take the next one. After the medicine is taken, you will converge your mind and breathe in silently, and strive to finish the absorption of the pill's spiritual energy within 1 big week of operation, and turn it into the spiritual spring deposits of your natal chi palace. While breathing on the ferry, Diyu became dizzy and suddenly heard Lu Jiqing say, here. Diyu opened his eyes and looked down at a lake with many islands, such as blue snails in a jasper plate. Lu Jiqing found Rong Chang, a major disciple of Duqui Jianhu, a sword repairman in the Yuanying realm, and roughly explained his intentions. Rong Chang quickly went to Master to ask for instructions. After returning, he smiled and said, Master readily agreed, saying that she is now in a sparse state and has no face to go out. Just let me walk with you, but Master said that you are not old-fashioned in doing things. There is such a blatant question to Jian Xiao from the ancestors of Jianbai's family. This kind of activity is too careless. Beating people without slaps in the face. It is more slapped than slashing the ancestors. A little spirit, life-saving, he went to Kaiang Glinzong to collect debts, used blind eyes, and quietly touched the Kaiang Glinzong Patriarch Hall, saving a few swords to cut through the mountain and water prohibition. We arrived near the Patriarch Hall, before we handed the sword, cover his face, and report a brave feat such as, I am the first man of the sword immortal in the north, by Chang, and ran away after the cut. In fact, Master's original words are not diarrhea, but diarrhea. It's just this kind of remarks, Master said right and wrong. Of course, Rong Chang, who is a big disciple, has to be subtle. Lu Jiqing nodded and said, teached. In this kind of thing, the Golden Crow Palace's experience is indeed inferior to yours. Rong Chang smiled knowingly. In Beiju Luzhou, of course it is a good word from the top. You didn't even know the sacredness of the tall and gracious man in front of him. However, listening to the tone of the dialogue between the two sides, it must be a senior on the mountain who does not lose the realm of Lu Jianxian. Otherwise, who is full and holding on, often asks Jian's sect. Rong Chang turned his head to hold a fist and smiled at Diyu, fortunately meeting. Diyu quickly tremblingly clasped his fists in return. 3 people came soon. Among them was a beautiful woman who called herself Sui. There is also a pair of teenagers and girls, who are like people on the painting. A bunch of people looked at Diyu together. Show Diyu a little Harry. Chenli asked, Big brother, can we be together? Rong Chang said helplessly, you have to ask Master first. One by one, they were all Master's baby bumps. There was a slight accident outside the sect. He, a senior brother, couldn't afford it, and Master's temper could make him shit. What's more, Master's temperament in recent years is really not very good. The boy put his hands around his chest. Master clearly knows that we will follow. Since there is no additional reminder of the senior brother, he must have agreed. Among the direct disciples collected by Li Kai in Benzhou, Duckweed Sword Lake has the best swordsmanship and is also Li Kai's favorite apprentice. Now he is named Sui Jingqing, but on the top of the Zhu Shitong's landscape genealogy, there is another old one. Name it. The hidden official Chen Li, Gao Yi, his sister, Gao Yuqing. Chen Li is now a sword repairer in the Golden Core realm. Unlike Bai Xian's self-proclaimed Little Hermit, Chen Li's nickname was given by the senior sword repairman in his hometown. It's on an innocent sign in a wine shop. Chen Li, the saber is awkward, and the flying sword is wailing. 100-year-old sword fairy is at your fingertips. As for Gao Yuqing, in fact, he was also a Longmen realm sword repairman. Only with Chen Li by her side, she pales in comparison. Otherwise, Gao Yuqing is a well-deserved genius of kendo in any sect of kendo in Haoran world. In the words of Master Li Kai, that is, Rong Chang, your senior brother is really energetic, waiting eagerly to be equalized by the juniors and sisters one by one. In the end, Rong Chang asked Master what he meant. Li Kai didn't bother to speak, just cast a look at Rong Chang. Rong Chang nodded, no need to talk nonsense. The group of people on the rune boat of Lu Jiqing had already made an appointment with Lu Jinglong of Taihui Sword Sect, and they met at the top of the Qianglin Sect Vassal Hill. Lu Jiqing and Rong Chang chatted. I plan to ask the sword to end, and I will go to the wild battlefield to find opportunities to break through. The monks in Jinhua Palace have never been to the Great Wall of Jinqi. At first, there were very few sword repairs, and Lu Jiqing had broken through the Golden Core realm for a few years, and he really didn't want to be on the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. He also needed the local sword to repair the road over there, not a disservice. Rong Chang smiled and said, "It's a good thing." Gao Yuqing had been looking at the military cultivator and couldn't believe what Lu Jiqing said, and asked in his heart, "Brother, do you think this person really saved the hermit?" On the fierce battlefield like the Great Wall of Jinqi, there are only young hidden officials who can save others. Chen Li thought for a while, nodded and said, "Judging by the time, the encounter between Lord Hidden Officer and Du was between the first time he returned home from the Great Wall of Jianqi and his second visit to the Great Wall of Jianqi as a hidden officer. The hidden officer is not yet a sword repairman, so it is possible. In fact, it is not possible, it is certain. Hermit-sama will definitely not be joking about this kind of thing." Sui Jingqing smiled and asked, "Master Du, who do you think is the most powerful and famous in the sword repairs in the Great Wall of Sword Qi?" Du quickly said, "Who else can it be? Of course it is the hidden official who is said to be from Aquarius Island. Once passing by a Xianjia ferry crossing by accident, I found a copy of the immortal swordsman's imprint, including a seal, which made Du the most famous in the case, and he will never tire of it. Let 3 tricks. There is such a coincidental and interesting thing in the world, and Du almost laughed so much that his stomach hurts. To the south of Dongbaipingshao, such a small place, Haoran Zhozhou has the smallest territory, but it is the place where Haoran 8 continents are the most admired heroes. There is a gossip on the rivers and lakes. It first came from the steward of a transcontinental ferry in Beiju Luzhou. The old steward said that the youngest hidden official in the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Yushu Linfeng, ruthless, kills without blinking. In the first meeting of the upside-down mountain Chunbansai, the young man who hung a hidden official badge finally appeared. The sword immortal and the steward sat face to face, but the two groups of people didn't talk a few words, and they didn't agree with each other. The hidden official gave an order in the hole. As a result, more than 20 transcontinental ferry stewards were half done on the spot. Fate, there is no way to fight back, believe it or not. Anyway, I was there, and I tried my best to save 2 friends. The young hidden officer, I was the most loyal, so he admired me. Heroes, no fight, no acquaintance, happy arms and words. The hidden officer sat next to me, and his head fell on the ground. The blood-stained land, each drinking. Nowadays, the place where young hidden officials is the most touted in the world is probably not Aquarius, but Beiju Luzhou, which has distinct love and hatred. The old-fashioned young Jianxiu smiled and nodded slightly. The girl blinked. Isn't the master Du Xian in front of him a fool? Although Diu was puzzled, he did not dare to ask more. Chenli smiled and said, "Have a chance, get to know each other." Diu waved his hand quickly. "How can I have this fate?" Fuyao Chao. A large number of sword repairmen from different hometowns successively met at the Xianjiaduku near the entrance of a mineral vein. The female sword immortal of Ia's Hao, Xia Songhua, 2 disciples, respectively named Xiaomu, Zhu Xing, a pair of young girls, one carrying a bamboo box, and one holding a green bamboo stick. Jin Jiazhou Songpin, who is also a female sword fairy, also accepted 2 children from the Great Wall of Sword Qi as heirs, but they were both girls named Sun Zhao and Jin Wang. There is also a Yupu realm sword repaired in Yuyue, with 2 new disciples, Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting. In Lixiazu, the old Jianqiu who fell in the Great Wall of Jinqi, Puhi is now in the Yuaning state. The old man also took 2 children from the Great Wall of Jinqi, the young Yedu and the girl Shuazhou. At this moment Puhi was scolding a fellow Jianqiu who had just arrived at the inn. "Yeah, this is not Situ Jiu, the great sword immortal with outstanding military exploits. Rare visitors and rare visitors. If I remember correctly, our hidden officer only invited me and Song Pin to come out of the mountain this time, but we didn't invite you here. Come by myself. As the only nascent soul stage, just shut up and don't talk to Yupu Jinshu. The Hermit Lord saw you most admiringly. He is really kind. I'm afraid that your qualifications will delay Situ Great Sword Immortal step into the Ascendant Realm. You are not willing to accept your apprentice. No wonder you speak so aggressively. Come, I will punish you for a bowl. If Situ Dajiangxian is still unsatisfied, I will kneel on the ground and give you a toast to the elderly. In fact, there are several old Jianxiu from various continents who have never been to the Great Wall of Jianqi in the house, all of whom are Xie Songhua and the others on the mountain, who know the routes and have the same temperament. It's just that they are squeezed in this room today, and they have no turn to speak at all. In fact, before Situ Jiu arrived, Yu had already been scolded by Pu He, pointing to the nose to curse. And Xie Songhua also feels that Yu is a bit untrue, and she has the face to run to the Luopa mountain to dig for the foot of the wall, and even swiftly ascends first to find an enshrined status. Why don't Yu Lao Jianxian simply ask for a deputy chief Dang Dang? This made Lao Jianxian Yu, who originally wanted to show off to Lao Pu, wanted to dig a hole in. You must know that Yu had been to the Great Wall of Jinqi battlefield anyway. All the remaining 6 or 7 Hauran old Jinshu simply did not dare to breathe, watching their noses and hearts one by one, each silently drinking and drinking tea. It's not that there are no old people who want a polite greeting. After all, there are some sword immortals who have never been masked, but have long heard of famous names, such as Xie Songhua from the Aizhou Island. Only soon they discovered that whether it was Xie Songhua, who was rumored to have killed a Yupu realm sword repair demon clan in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, or Song Pin, who was extremely beautiful and carried a swinging sword, they were too lazy to talk to anyone. In addition, these old people from their hometowns who would be called sword fairy are indeed curious about the sword fairies of the same age. It is a pity that Li Kai, a female sword fairy from Luzhou in Beiju, did not come. I heard that she had accepted 2 disciples, and she was also very qualified. One of them even had the nickname of the Little Hermit. Almost everyone is here, let me talk about the meaning of Lord Hermit. Song Pin suddenly said, in fact, it's the same thing. Whoever makes money, how to make money, don't care about it, but if anyone has the thoughts and actions of I can't get it, no one wants it, then do it. He smiled while stroking his beard. It must be the original words of the hidden officer. Song Pin smiled and said, actually, the original words of the hidden official are to let us be reasonable. Puha immediately clapped his hands and exclaimed, the original words are better. Sitijiu couldn't help cursing, why didn't you kneel at the entrance of the summer palace? He sneered and said, I have fallen, and I have to heal my wounds, otherwise I will definitely have a place in the summer palace. Unlike some people who fish on the battlefield. Yu always felt that Pu Lauer was scolding himself. CS Songhua smiled and said, being able to pick up rags on the battlefield is also a craft. Song Pin took the lead to get up, and said calmly, leave. At the curtain of the sky, a sage who was in charge of the saint in Tonggishao, nodded with the swordsman in the blue shirt, and said, the saint of rights once instructed to allow the hermit to go to the colorful world within Jiazi, without consumption. Battle exploits. But I don't need to take the initiative to remind the hermit, it will be invalidated after expiration. Chen Pingan thanked him, and then was about to ask about it. The sage of the Confucian temple had already laughed first. Is anyone going to swim with the hermit? Why didn't I see it? At this moment, beside Chen Pingan, there was actually an entourage with a yellow hat, blue shoes and green bamboo stick standing next to him. Chen Pingan understands. Xiao Imo changed his body in an instant, and a snow-white spider lay on the shoulder of the green shirt. The sage of the Confucian temple smiled and reminded, remember not to stay too long. Chen Pingan nodded and said, it will be the beginning of spring in a few days. The juniors will definitely go back quickly. Chen Pingan lowered his head and glanced at the mountains and rivers of the earth, converging his thoughts. His blue shirt and big sleeves swayed in the wind and stepped into the gate. The old man gave a secret applause, and the young man had a good demeanor. The bottom of the sleeves has the color of the sea, and the brows are blue to see the marks of the sky. A colorful world, soaring to the city. Someone revisits the old place, and it is also regarded as hometown in a foreign country. Sort of coming Chapter 9-11. The upload is too late. Flying City. Business in the wine shop was good today, and two groups of people came to the front and back. As soon as the bachelors including Fan Dach and Wang Xinshui took their seats, several women including Situ Longqiu and Luo Zhini came. Without having to look at Jing Dafeng, the shopkeeper, Fan Dach and the others took the initiative to give the latter the last seat at the wine table, obediently go to the side of the road and squat to drink, and listen to some stories about the gods fighting on the bed with their Dafeng brothers. Never thought that Jing Dafeng had gone to sit down beside the wine table. An old Jindanjian Xiu sitting on the side of the roadside. This old bachelor who is not young can drink a bowl of wine for a long time. Every time I hear the story of Jing Dafeng, there is at least a bowl of wine left. Most of the bowl, pricked up my ears and heard of the treasurer. The old man came along and sighed with emotion. He never thought that the old man would hear these things in this life of cleanliness and self-care. After Jing Dafeng took his seat, he was already sitting on the edge of the long stool. A female Jinshu still got up immediately and turned to squeeze a stool with two friends. Jing Dafeng lifted his hips silently and slid along the bench. It was warm. Before drinking, Dafeng's brother felt warm. When the woman saw this scene, her eyebrows were drooped, but the thought of cursing was useless, maybe it would only make him worse, and she said something strange, so she raised her drinking bowl and drank a long mouthful of boring wine. Sitting opposite Jing Dafeng, it happened to be the female sword repairer of the hidden official line of the Summer Palace, Luo Zhini. The woman's face, figure, temperament, and kendo realm are nothing to say. Look left and right, front and back. Anyway, you look seductive. Probably the Luozhini in the eyes of the young man in Feixingcheng is Song Kaiyun and Zhou Qing in the eyes of the old man at the Great Wall of Jinqi. Our acting shopkeeper Xing Dafeng, not long after he first came to take over the wine shop, relying on only 3 things, quickly gained a foothold in the Great Wall of Jinqi. The appearance of thick eyebrows and big eyes, Yushu breeze, good gambling on the wine table, and 2 lists are made. Every few years, the top 10 fairies and 10 beautiful embryos are selected, all in one go. Once every 2 or 3 years, Luozhini ranks in the top 3 of the top 10 fairies every time. As for the Dongbu, who didn't come to drink today, he was selected twice. The ranking was fluctuating and the gap was relatively large. The first time he ranked bottom, the second time he directly broke into the top 3. However, Miss Dong has been selected as the top candidate by Xing Dafeng for the next selection that is about to be released. No way, before Guizhuzhou left Wucai Tianxia, he secretly gave a sum of money to the gods, saying that an old girl must be first this time, otherwise he really couldn't get married. The little girl also has the style of the heroine who does good things without leaving her name. She repeatedly told the shopkeeper, "Don't say it is her credit, the old girl really wants to ask, just say that it was the money that Deng Liang and Deng paid." Sita Longqiu asked, "I heard that the hidden official said that there is a place called Yendang Mountain on Aquarius Island, which has a very good scenery. What else will it be the mountain of the prince?" Before, she and 2 boudoir friends asked Chen Pingon for tripartite seals. Her collection of book seals was related to a place called Dalongqiu in Yendang Mountain. Xing Dafeng nodded and said, "The scenery is really great. I have a chance to go and see it. Next time Brother Dafeng will help lead the way. Miss Situ, don't you know that there are many scholars in the world, but there are few serious people like Brother Dafeng." Situ Longqiu is the concubine of the Situ family on Taixiang Street. Before the war, she was only a sword repair at the bottleneck of the sea view. He broke through the city in this flying city, and then went out to experience the golden core in the colorful world. She and Dong must not be friends in the boudoir who talklessly talk. Among the younger generation of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Situ Longqiu is not a genius, but the popularity is very good. As a result, she got a nickname inexplicably a few years ago. The name is a bit long, and she was said to be a landscape mansion on the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The nickname spread throughout the entire ascended city at once, and it is said that it was first accidentally spread from the Summer Palace. In fact, it was the hidden official who accidentally missed his mouth in his early years. The famous doglegs in the Summer Palace were amazed by it and screamed at the case. After coming and going, it gradually spread. In addition, there is a Dongbu in the Summer Palace. Can he hide his words? Guizhuzhou, as a disciple, is not in Feixingcheng, so of course she has to do it. Since the father pays attention to repaying the debts, it is even more logical to pay the debts of the teacher and the disciples. If there are any inexplicable and unsolvable grievances, I will come to me if I have the ability. So Guizhuzhou's end is dong dong dong. Xing Dafeng asked suddenly, "Miss Situ, what do you think of Dafeng brothers?" Situ Longqiu glanced at the man and said, "I don't know if it's useful, but I don't see it anyway. How can Xing Dafeng dislike such a girl, such a flying city? Is really no different from hometown." Xing Dafeng raised his wine bowl. A beautiful woman can't believe it when she speaks, so she can listen to it as an irony. Luozhini gently stepped on his friend's foot under the wine table. The woman named Guanmei glanced at her friend and asked with a smile to Xing Dafeng, "On behalf of the shopkeeper, Ning Yao returned from Haorantian, but did not bring back any news. For example, Lin Junbai and the others returned to their hometown. How's it going?" On the way, Luozhini asked her to help Xing Dafeng to ask about one thing, saying that she wanted to know what happened to the sword repair in the Summer Palace. Guanmei has a good impression of Xing Dafeng. Her speech is funny, and her temper is good. No matter who says it, he is not angry. He talks a little bit too much. Whenever she sees a woman with a good figure, she has to show her brilliance, but the shopkeeper of the small wine shop is never frivolous. Jing Dafeng rubbed his chin, looking embarrassed. Calling for the shopkeeper, I was so distressed that I couldn't speak. Guanmei leaned forward quickly, poured a bowl of wine for Jing Dafeng. Jiao Didi said, "Brother Dafeng, let me talk about it, I beg you." Jing Dafeng lifted the bowl with both hands to receive the wine, craned his neck, looked at the collar of the shirt and said, "Sister Guanmei, if you say that, Dafeng will be sad." "Brother Dafeng, do you need to ask for it?" Guanmei deliberately kept the pouring posture, and sat back in no hurry. She acted like a baby, shaking her scented shoulders, say. The old lady is willing to give up for her friends. Hey, Dafeng's brother trembled and his eyes hurt. Jing Dafeng saw the girl sitting back. Ning Yao didn't say much, anyway, they went to different schools and practiced separately. But it seems like the boy Lin Junbai became the national teacher of the Shao Yuan dynasty and became the youngest among the 10 dynasties of Haoran. It's not too much to say that the name moves the world. Chao Dagon is lucky. The sect is in Lixiaozu. He has not been affected by the war. He is planning to open his next sect in Fuyazhou. Maybe Chao Dagon will be able to do so. Making an exception to find a suzerain Dang Dang, Song Gaoyuan and Scrofulariaceae were nearly lucky. One of the sects is in Fuyazhou and the other is in Jinjiazhu. Now they are busy rebuilding the sect. As for repairing the old site or simply starting a new stove, I don't know. In the summer palace of the previous generation, the hidden official sword repairs. Chen Ping'an is a sword repairer from a foreign country. Lin Junbai, Deng Liang, Chao Dagon, Scrofulariaceae, Song Gaoyuan. Local sword repairs have troubles. Pang Yuanji, Dong Bu, Guizhujiu. Gu Jianlong, Wang Xinshui, Su Ning, Luozhini, Chang Taiqing. Pick out one randomly and ask the sword with outsiders. It is both capable of playing and calculating. As long as the realms of the two sides are not very different, it cannot be said that the winning ticket is stable, but the chance of winning is definitely great. In Jing Dafeng's view, the two groups of young people who became hidden officials behind the sword repairers in the summer palace are still inferior to these predecessors. Guanmei waited for a long time, and seeing that Jing Dafeng was only drinking with her head down, she wondered, is it all right? Jing Dafeng raised his head and said with a shy expression, some things can't be done with hard support. It's not a scholar who writes articles, simmering, holding back, there is always something. Guanmei was puzzled for a while, what is he shy about? It is a pity that Dong, who was not ashamed as a child, had to be present, otherwise she is an expert and must know Jing Dafeng's thoughts. As soon as the group of women from Situ Longqiu left, Jing Dafeng's whole body collapsed, and finally he didn't have to deliberately strain his old man's unique charm. Otherwise, these young girls who have not been involved in the world may not be able to beat them. They can't beat them, they are just a pile of love debts, they can't be committed, it's unnecessary. Jing Dafeng hurriedly turned his head and waved his hand, hurry up, one by one is squatting in the pit, and if it is later, the stool will be cold. Jing Dafeng kicked off his boots, sat cross-legged on the bench, and asked, Xian Shui, are there any girls who make you think about it and toss and turn at night? A group of bachelors Pidian ran to occupy the position. Wang Xinshui shook his head when he heard the words, no. Jing Dafeng shook his head and said, if your kid spends a little time thinking about the relationship between men and women, you won't be going to mess with Fan Dach. Wang Xinshui is of course a veritable genius sword repairer. The only problem is that his mind is too fast and his premonition is so accurate that he can't keep up with the speed of handing his sword at all. This delicate situation is extremely difficult to improve. So over the years, Wang Xinshui still likes to come here to drink boring wine to relieve worries. Fan Dach looked helpless, and he asked me what to do. Xing Dafeng took a sip of wine and chopsticks to serve the wine and vegetables. The salty is really salty. He quickly took a sip of wine. He turned around and asked, "Deche, now walking on the street, I saw the kid calling you. Uncle Fan, what do you think?" Fan Dach smiled and said, "I don't have much thoughts, it's good." Xing Dafeng rubbed his chin. "I heard that Pang Yuanji, Lin Junbai, Chao Dagon, and of course the Mi Daijiangxian, all of them were very beautiful in their skins. I don't know if I have a 70 to 80% demeanor." After Fan Dach and his party left, the setting sun went down, and there were more empty tables in the wine shop, and Xing Dafeng lay on the counter to settle the accounts. After Xing Dafeng took over the wine shop, the business was actually okay, the money was not less, and the level of excitement on weekdays was the only one in Feishing City. Feng Kangol and Tao Ban are just two little rascals. They always think that the wine shop is not as lively as it used to be, and the difference is too much. Xing Dafeng is also really suffocated. Now the entire ascended city, there are only a few upper 5 sword repairs, and there are not many young yuaning. This makes it difficult for clever women to cook without rice. Where can you ask me to find you a bunch of yupu and yuaning jinsho, squatting on the roadside and drinking? Liquor shops are all old faces. Except for the change of the shopkeeper, there are still Chiu Rang, Louis, Feng Kangol, and Tao Ban. It's just Zhang Jiazhen and Jiang, who were taken to the world by the second shopkeeper in their early years. In fact, Chiu Long and Louis have reached the age of marriage, and they have been procrastinating for many years. Later, Chiu Long finally listened to the words of the shopkeeper and collected the thoughts of being far away in the sky. It is better to be nearby. Take the person in front of you. The two were married a few years ago. Chiu Long married Lu Yi and Xing Dafeng married, of course, he even took the lead in making trouble in the bridal chamber. The young couple live a stable life and plan to earn more money and save more savings. They have to open a wine shop for husband and wife. Of course, they will not open in Feishingcheng. They will choose one of the 4 border vassal cities. Most likely, it was the summer city. Because it was Jian Xiu from the line of the hidden official of the summer palace as the city lord, he was half of his own family. The wine shop really encountered something, so there was something to take care of. Jian Xiu, who just entered the summer palace, will come here to have a drink. This has become a customary rule, just like worshipping the mountain. Feng Kangol and Tao Ban, the 2 teenagers who used to help with miscellaneous tasks, have now become the second hands of the wine shop. Liquor shop still only has 3 kinds of drinks, the cheap Zhuhai Dong Tian wine, the expensive Qingshanshan wine, the dumb lake wine with a knife, plus a plate of pickles and a bowl of Yangchen noodles for no charge. The wine bowl is as big as before, and the bench is as thin as before. It's just on the wall of the wine shop in 2 rooms side by side. Those innocent cards are still the same, there is no one missing or one more. Because Xing Dafeng came to Feishing City and became a representative shopkeeper, after the wine shop was able to reopen, there is no such thing as the tradition of someone who has drunk the wine and wrote a no wrong card. Is like a mountain closure. Since there is really nothing wrong, there is no need to write a nothing card. At the beginning, there were people who had troubles, both old patrons and new drinkers, but they were all useless. Xing Dafeng bowed his head and bowed, apologized with a smile, and punished 3 bowls of himself, but there was no card, so I didn't write it. Fortunately, the second shopkeeper secretly cultivated the wine to do in his early years. Most of them helped Xing Dafeng to speak, come and go. As Xing Dafeng is indeed a pleasing fellow, the guests gradually get used to it and stop embarrassing. This is also a foreign country. the treasurer of people and scholars. There are so many books on behalf of the shopkeeper, only to talk about certain aspects of the book on the door. 2 palms the cabinet is really incomparable. In other restaurants in Feishing City, I don't know where to buy a few bottles of genuine Qingshan wine at a high price. They are regarded as the treasures of the town shop. Of course, they also mean to fight with that small wine shop. The 2 are sold, and soon people will go joining in. After a drink, they scolded and left, almost unwilling to pay for the bill. Fake wine, sell fake wine. Qingshan wine is not like this at all. One by one, they were convinced, and a bunch of chicks were pecking rice at the shop table and on the side of the road. The shopkeeper of the restaurant is going crazy. Until now, less than a jar of Qingshan wine has been sold, and the restaurant will not be able to collect the capital, let alone making money. Jing Dafeng glanced at the 2 people on the wine table not far away, eating a bowl of yangchan noodles, but did not treat him badly, knowing to add 2 poached eggs. Today's Taoban and Feng Kangle are actually the same strong guys who can pancakes on their butts, and they both have stubble. When I was a teenager and a child, Taoban actually asked the second shopkeeper a question, and when he came to the shopkeeper Jing Dafeng, he asked another question about the same, only turning the sword fairy embryo into a wu shui genius. Later Taoban asked another question that made Jing Dafeng not know how to answer. Can I still see the second shopkeeper in this life? Because Taoban knows that he is neither a sword fairy nor a martial arts wizard. He is just an ordinary person who will soon become a middle-aged person. The old man may not be able to wait until the next time the colorful world opens. Seeing that Jing Dafeng didn't say anything at the time, Taoban muttered to herself, saying that she was young and could not drink alcohol at that time, so she had never had a drink with the second shopkeeper. In the deep twilight, there was a table of drunkies who got drunk, and someone laughed and said, "Brother Dafeng, you always win your money like this." From the happiness at the beginning, to awkwardness, to heartache, now I am almost regretful. Jing Dafeng thought about it, nodded and said, "Well, it's almost like love between men and women." Someone suddenly chewed out some aftertaste and shouted hello. Someone asked, "On behalf of the shopkeeper, you can tell us the truth. Are you good at gambling or making trouble without washing your hands all year round?" Jing Dafeng was too lazy to talk, and raised a middle finger. Someone started talking drunkenly. To tell the truth of the conscience, I asked the second shopkeeper a punch, he couldn't beat me twice. The second shopkeeper hasn't come back yet, no one is sitting in the bank. The Great Wall of Sword Chi used to have 2 sayings, the old and the new. The old, respectively, are the good gambling products of the dog, the old deaf child speaks human words, Lu Ji's national beauty, the hidden official's pity and love, me yes affectionate can't keep it since ancient times. New, the young man of the second shopkeeper is not deceived and never sits in the village. Situlonkius I swear it is absolutely true. I see Long's Rong lousy to be fair, Dong Wafi's spending is like running water, and Wang Xinshu's no problem before the sword, count mine after the fight. Both the old and the new, there are foreigners on the list at the same time, and the 2 guys on the list are both scholars, but there are some differences. A Liang can't wait to see gentleman, scholar, and you think him not handsome because you have the look in your eyes. Question. These statements are carved on the forehead. Young hermits, on the contrary, never deliberately advertised their academic status. At the wine shop, they vowed to say something with conscientiousness. I really have an average drinker. I never sit in the farm and persuade the wine to hurt the character at the table. You are a human being. You have to talk about your conscience, and you have to talk about evidence. Later Feishingcheng, in fact, there is a new saying of the for monsters. One is Ning Yao temporarily leads hermit, but he is not the lord of the city. Finally, as the second in command of the criminal officer, Nian Xayan, whose true identity, has not been able to tell why until now. I only heard that Nien Axian never speaks when discussing matters in the Patriarch Hall. Then there was Duspan Jai, one of the private residences of Jianxian outside the city in the past. 3 men dressed in women's dresses. Finally, the cultivators of Quamphus account room opened their eyes to picking up the money. They asked me to make money. The plaques that these monks hang in their account huts are very distinctive. What kind of heaven rewards hard work, diligence can make up for one's weaknesses, wealth is abundant, and the sky is 3 feet high. Especially the latter two, their fame is spreading all over the world. Because Shizhou, Shuiyu, and Jinjin, 3 immortal sword repairers, relying on a certain kind of master's magical power, the 3 masters and brothers took turns out of the city to search for the sword fairy embryos in the foreign country. And this secret method inheritance, the threshold is very high, and now only 2 of the dozens of direct disciples barely master it. Among them, Shizhou has actually been among the nascent souls. According to the will left by the master, he can already put on his normal attire. I heard that Shizhou had just put on a robes from the clothes shop in the past, and he still had time to go out to find someone to drink, but the 2 juniors came to the door and almost turned against him, and had to continue blessed and shared. Thanks to the direct disciples collected by Shizhou and Junior Shuiyu, they asked a very good question that year. As a result, all the disciples have to wear women's dresses with the master. So these 2 big brothers are now the thorns of the same discipline. In fact, the term for monsters is interesting and interesting, fun and fun. I just don't know why, everyone thinks it's not that interesting anymore. I always feel that something is missing. Maybe today's Feixingcheng, without the few old people who were once familiar with the sword repairs of the upper 5 realms, and the few old people with the sword spirit of the Great Wall, or it may be the 2 scholars who have received the most scolding. It's like cursing someone. If from beginning to end, you are the only one swearing with your hips akimbo, spitting, and no one will return your mouth. In the end, you will feel tiring. So someone has to scold it. Qing Quan and Zhao Guiyin, are they old swordsmen who can curse people? But the second shopkeeper, if you add them together, it's not enough. Now Qi Shou, the head of the criminal officers line, heard that he was just sitting at the head of the city and he didn't do anything or said a word. He was only injured by both sides of the quarrel and was innocent. He was almost scolded by Qing Quan. Feces. Jinchi Great Wall treated the young hidden official either like it or hated it, and there was no third kind of person. Of course, there are also those who have been cheated and those who have not been cheated. There used to be a monk in Chuanfu who didn't know whether he wanted money to lose his heart, or to admire the second shopkeeper for a long time. One night, a young man sneaked up to come to the wine shop and stole the couplet from the second shopkeeper, of course. I didn't forget to carry a pair of fake couplets with me. As a result, the little thief was caught by Jing Daifeng's neck. After that, he went to the wine shop for a month of drinks before writing off the account. Jing Daifeng turned his head and looked at the street and sighed. Today's Feixing city, roughly 3 hills have been shaped. Are the 3 forces of criminal official, hidden official, and Chuanfu. Ningyao temporarily holds the position of hermit, and now the number of sword repairers in the summer palace has reached 20. However, in Jing Daifeng's view, a soaring city still has many hidden worries. Just talking about the hidden official line, there is a lack of a second in command who really convinces the public. Although Luo Zhini is a sword repairer in the nascent soul realm, and she is almost certain that she will be among the 5 realms, because of her personality, Ning Yao is not soaring. When I was in the city, in the summer palace, I encountered endless disputes. It was difficult for someone to make a real final word. It was not that they were not smart enough, but that everyone was smart, but no one could do the well-deserved smartest. In addition, the new hidden official line of the Summer Palace can hardly be restored to the intimacy before, and the atmosphere is much deserted. For example, on the small hill that first approached the new hidden official that year, there were 6 sword repairmen. Besides Guizhuzhou and Mi Daijiangxian, there were 4 others. Gu Jianlong and Wang Xinshui, plus Chao Dang, Scrofulariaceae. 2 natives and 2 foreign villages, 4 young swordsmen, known as the 4 big doglegs of the Summer Palace, worked together to honor Guizhuzhou as the leader of a certain gang. Today's summer residence, how could such a scene appear? After all, there is neither Chen Pingan nor Miao Jianxian. Ning Yao is the #1 person in the world, and the only ascension monk in the colorful world, not to mention the sword repair. However, facing those trivial matters, it is difficult for Ning Yao to be thorough in all aspects. Moreover, this really shouldn't be what Ning Yao needs to do. In addition, the chief worshipper Deng Liang is invisible, and gradually draws up a hidden mountain. It's not that Deng Liang wants to compete with someone for power out of selfishness, but some general trend. In addition, the general trend of the world is becoming more and more clear, and there are constantly foreign monks coming to Feixingcheng. Although there are 4 vassal cities blocked and guarded by layers, all kinds of infiltrations are endless and it is impossible to prevent. In addition, the entire ascending city has not realized one thing. Except for the handful of sword fairies on the table, or all sword repairs, those who can really determine the future direction of Feixing City are actually those humble ordinary masters. Jing Dafeng knows some inside stories that ordinary sword repairers do not know. Not long ago, Ning Yao suddenly left Wucai Tianxia with a sword, and then returned to Feixingcheng from Haoran Tianxia. She convened a meeting of the Patriarch's Hall. After Jingxiang, Ning Yao only said a few words, and was shocked by the 40 people who had seats. Chen Pingan took her, Qi Tingji, Lu Ji, criminal officer Hao Su, and by Yujing's 3 heads to teach Lu Xin, and they walked the barren hinterland together. Smashed the fairy hairpin city into 2 pieces, killed the ascended realm great demon mysterious garden, opened the Suyua mountain with the sword, and killed the culprit of the wild great ancestor's disciple, and a round of Mingyue Haocai was moved to Qingming world. As for how the group of them did it, and who did one of the feats, Ning Yao didn't say anything, and soon changed the subject and started discussing other things. Even if Jian Xiu from the hidden official line asked about it afterwards, Ning Yao did not reveal the secret, only that you would ask someone in the future. Anyway, she didn't make much effort during this long journey. One of the meetings of the Patriarch Hall was about the selection of the calendar. The first year of a world, the name is Jiachuan, which was established by the Confucian Temple. Wucai Tianxia was originally a brand new site that Confucian sages paid a great price and painstakingly opened up, so no one had any objections to it. However, the Confucian Temple did not intervene in the compilation of the almanac. Instead, it was handed over to the local forces of Wucai Tianxia. This is not a trivial matter, especially if this almanac can pass through the world. It can occupy a share of, according to the will of heaven, the precious time. In the 2 worlds of Haoran and Qingming, changes in celestial phenomena have been related to the rise and fall of emperors in the world since ancient times. Therefore, compiling calendars and assigning time to the heavens is a major measure known as the establishment of Jingxuo. Therefore, Qintian prisons in various countries have been installed. The arithmetic and arithmetic department uses arithmetic and arithmetic methods to calculate the degree of the heavens. Bai Yujing Taoist priest first released an almanac, which has been widely circulated in the colorful world. And Sui Chu Gong teamed up with Xian Du Guan and also compiled a tit-for-tat almanac. In addition, Fuyazhou and Tonghis subjugated refugees have also released as many as a dozen different versions of their almanacs. Ning Yao suggested using the almanac compiled by Sui Chu Gong and Xuantaguan in this meeting of the Patriarch Hall of the Feixing City. On the contrary, no one has any objections, except for the sword repair of the hidden official line. All the members of the Patriarch Hall looked at Ning Yao one by one. Most of them looked complicated, curious, and doubtful. It seems to be asking Ning Yao about something, but our hidden official. Ning Yao can't laugh or cry. Do you really treat him as omniscient and omnipotent? In the twilight, Fan Dach left the wine shop. After separating from his friends, he walked alone on the street that didn't know whether it was more lively or deserted than before. The single Jin Dan Jinxiu did not return to his house or go to the summer palace. Looking at the archives, I just wandered around until late that night. I returned to the door of the wine shop. It was already closed and sat at the wine table outside the door that was never accepted according to the old rules. Nianxin was sitting in a daze in a small house. The Zushitang passed a resolution before, and she now secretly controls a new prison, which is similar to the old deaf children before. A woman who was said to be an old girl sat on the railing of the high boudoir, watching the faintly lit up city. She held a delicate ball fan in her hand, fanning lightly, a touch of melancholy. At the time when the summer palace divided the accounts, Dong could not get the fan in his hand. The precious light was flowing, and the words on the fan were beautiful. Jin Lian Lian, Yu Tuan Tuan. I am stubborn, sleep in the moon palace, go to Gue Pasua, humanity is more clear. This night is the most reunion, with millions of lights. If you say that young hidden officials are giving off public welfare for private purposes, it is not counted. No, it is because the hidden officials' sword repairs are all obtained by real combat achievements. Forget it, because the hidden officials have left some good things to them. Own people. I have been living in the summer palace all these years. Luo Zhini in, sitting at the table at the moment, holding his cheek. There is an ancient inkstone on hand, which is also a short distance away. This Fanqualong pattern moth-eaten inkstone is engraved on the top of the inkstone platform, with the seal of appreciation. The cloud is standing on the water, and the text is deep. Su Ning and Chang Taiqing were drinking together elsewhere in the summer palace. The two friends talked about everything, but both intentionally or unintentionally bypassed the young hidden official. Why can a foreigner who was not a sword repairer be able to sit down? Just saying one thing, Su Ning always thinks about it, and feels complicated. All the sword repairs on the Great Wall of Sword Qi in the past, and even all the people who were not sword repairs in the small streets and alleys, as long as the summer palace has archives, the young hidden official remembers it clearly. If you just remember a name and a general resume, it's nothing at all. The problem is that the hidden official is connecting everyone in a line, just to find someone who may be a wild and dark chess. Qi Shou is not in Feishing City at this moment, but standing on the head of Tuyua City, with his hands folded, looking out at the sky, staring at the sky all day. In his view, some carefree genealogists on the road of practice, if they go down the mountain and have not many experiences, they may be 100 years old, and they are really just cultivating embryos. It is necessary to talk about the mind, especially the human affection and sophistication. It is estimated that they are no better than many weak men under the mountain. Fortunately, the young sword repairers who ascended to the city are growing up at an extremely rapid rate. Everyone is determined to forge ahead and is committed to opening up new territory. Sword repairers are constantly making mistakes while showing their sharp edges. Fortunately, this is a brand new world. No matter the place or time, the sword repairs of Feishingcheng are allowed to make mistakes. In addition, Deng Liang, the chief consecration of Ascension City from the awe-inspiring world, served as an excellent bridge. Now 8 hills have been opened up, and 4 more cities have been built. With Feishing City as the center, a circle of mountains and rivers with a radius of thousands of miles is drawn. In addition, there are 4 enclaves that are extremely far away from Feishing City. They have gained a firm foothold. Those who are stationed in the sword repairs have not handed swords to outsiders for 2 full years. Qi Shou suddenly patted the brand new city wall, narrowed his eyes and smiled. Finally, they are all new. The Qin family mansion on Taishiang Street. A young man named Qin Ji, who had nothing to do with him, looked at a scholar's note in the study, which was bought by Yuan Yu Jianqiu at a low price from the remnants of Tongyi's Hao. There is a close-knit maid standing silently in the house, but she has recently entered the Yupu realm from the Yuanying realm back then. So Qin Ji, who had been stuck in the nascent soul realm, took a Yupu realm sword repair, as his major disciple in this life. Give the surname Qin, the name Hui. Oh, the last day of each month. Means that she can stay high and far and truly achieve long-term vision, so she can stay in Feishing City and become a backup at a certain critical moment. Qin Ji, or Qin Shi in the previous life, after the reincarnation of the soldiers, used secret methods to make up for his soul and soul. Since his soul has changed, his temperament will inevitably change, so he is not particularly anxious to become the first lord of Ascension City. I just hope that Qi Shou or someone can carry the burden. As for Ning Yao, forget it, she definitely won't be a city lord. In fact, in today's Ascension City, many sword repairmen would fight for the old sword fairy Qin Shi. If it weren't for beheading an ascended great demon empress, Qin Shi was trapped in a siege and was led by two old throned great demon and a large group of wild monks to death. In the end, after beheading another sword repairman in the Jade Purity realm, he had to be disbanded. Then Qin Shi could become the first sword repairman in the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi with 2 engravings. Qin Ji certainly doesn't care about this kind of thing. One of the 8 vassal hills outside the city, Zifu Mountain. Deng Liang stood in front of an ancient stone tablet, looking at the 2 lines of ancient seal script, 6 Dong Danxia Profound Book, Sanqing Zifu Green Chapter. Take out a jade box from the sleeve, and it will be completely refined soon. If no accident, you can touch the bottleneck threshold of the Jade Pu realm. This is the Dao Yuan of Xianji and Xian. It seems that this mountain has been silently waiting for Deng Liang for thousands of years. Therefore, Deng Liang has cultivated here in recent years. A certain woman named No, since she couldn't ask for it, she didn't ask for it. Deng Liang entered the colorful world in the 7th year of Jiachuan, and served as the chief worshipper of Feishing City. At that time, Qi Shou also happened to be in the Yupu realm, but Gao Yu was still in the Yuanying realm. Deng Liang turned and left, taking a walk in the Zifu mountain. The 5th world is too big, and there are too few people entering this new world. It's like a huge lake, just thrown into a few baskets of fish. Go to a tree, squat down on the ground, and pick up a fallen leaf. Deciduous tree from abroad. Missing is like falling leaves on the ground, all looks the same, but in fact they are all different. The shopkeeper said it well, unrequited love, like a hanged, self-hanging rope, is thoughts, and the beam above his head is the sweetheart who can't ask for it. All unrequited lovesickness who have never fulfilled their wishes are hanged ghosts that never leave. Not scary, not harmful, only annoying, only worrying. Gao Yeho is now a sword repairman in the Yupu realm. Chuanfu merged the sword workshop Yifang Danfang of the Great Wall of Sword Qi in the past, and Gao Yeho became the well-deserved god of wealth in Feishing City. However, Gao Yeho didn't intervene in specific affairs. The monks in Quanfus family were mostly young people selected from the Yen family and the Nalan family who were really in charge of money and affairs. Among them, the number of sword repairers was small and the qualifications were average. Otherwise, it is not enough to come to Quan Mansion to make a plan, about it is to turn grief and anger into strength. Compared with ordinary Spring Mansion members, they have to pay more attention to the account book. Inside the spring house, the lights were brightly lit, and Gao Yeho was sitting in her own account. He missed his sister a little. I don't know if she practiced smoothly at the Duckweed Sword Lake in Luzhou, Beiju, and whether she has found her favorite Riolang. June. Just thinking of the fact that Fei Xingcheng would prepare for the establishment of a college, Takon Oho was a little annoyed. It was not a money issue at all, so it was troublesome. In the night, at the southernmost city of the vassal, 2 monks from other villages came, a middle-aged man in a blue shirt and long gown and shoes, and a young man in a yellow hat, green shirt and green bamboo staff. There is a stall at the gate of the city. There is nothing to say about the colorful world today, but in accordance with the rules set by Feishing City, all visitors must sit down here and write clearly their origin, name, road number, and hometown. Hometown, under the mountain, the more detailed the better, anyway, no less than 300 words, more is better, even if the hour is written, it is also considered skill, the number of words is more, and you can drink a pot of wine prepared long ago. Like that the summer city to the north is a pot of Dumb Lake wine. Here, it is the wine made by the Yen family. Behind the stall, on a bench, sat 2 young sword cultivators, 1 male and 1 female, not high in realm, and one of them was not even a middle 5 cultivator. Who is coming? I don't understand. The man gestured in the north-south direction, roughly asking where he came from. If you come from the north, your hometown will be Fuyazhou, otherwise it will be the famous street in Tonggishao. The green-shirt guest said in Izhou's elegant words, Father Tong Yizhou, Do Yi. Follow the stranger. The man endured the discomfort in his heart, and asked in a crappy Tong Yizhou Yayan, do you know the rules here? I just came here, I don't know. The man picked up a piece of paper, turned it over, and swiped it forward on the table. Follow the items above and write clearly one by one. As soon as I heard that the other party was Monk Tong Yizhou, his face was not very good, but he didn't say anything badly at all. If it wasn't where his duties were, he would change to another place without looking at him. So the man who claimed to be Do Yi sat on a long bench, sat across the table with the 2 Jian Xiu, and began to write with a pen. The young man remained calm, but asked the woman next to him with his heartfelt voice, how does this character read? The woman said helplessly, I don't know, it's the first time I have seen it. The man couldn't help but cursed in his heart, Gu Ris scholar. As expected, he is the from Tonggishao. The woman nodded lightly, agreeing. I never thought that the green-shirt guest wrote more and more vigorously. He asked for a piece of paper and another. It was not over yet. Every time the other party finishes writing a sheet, the young Jinsho stretches out his hand and takes one. Many of his words are uncommon, and he recognizes Lao Tzu, but Lao Tzu doesn't recognize them. It's sour and sour. You treat yourself as our second shopkeeper. The woman Jian Xiu looked at it with gusto. She wrote quite a bit of literary talent. Looking at the man in the blue shirt again, he is not handsome, he looks like Zhou Zheng, but after a few more glances, it becomes more pleasing to the eye. I really saw that the green shirt guest was too dedicated to his work. Looking at the posture, I can write a few more sheets of paper. Because it is only the last page, I can write about how this guy has repeatedly fought and failed in the imperial court. After repeated battles, I finally got the title on the gold list. In fact, it has already exceeded 300 words. The man couldn't help but ask, can you drink alcohol? If you can drink, just rest for a while and write slowly. Drinks are not accepted. Money. While holding up a pen to write, the man raised his head and smiled, I can't drink enough. Forget about it. Drink, why don't you drink? Anyway, you don't charge money. The woman smiled when she heard the words and helped to pour a bowl of wine. The man in the green shirt puts down the brush in his hand, twists his wrist lightly, turns his head and invites, Xiao Mo, sit down and drink together. You have to wait a while for your resume. Your writings are like a fountain tonight, and you can't stop it. The young entourage with the weird name sat on one end of the bench, sitting with his dreaded, took the wine bowl, and then smiled and nodded with the woman Jinsho in thanks. lifted the bowl and took a sip of the drink. The man in the green shirt suddenly squinted his eyes and asked, "It's not surprising, why did I suddenly understand your Mandarin in Feixingcheng?" The woman smiled and said, "It's not surprising, anyway, it has already been sent to the city by flying swords." It turned out that the man Jianxiu deliberately switched to Feixingcheng Mandarin when he asked the other party whether to drink, and the green shirt guest was really stupid and took the bait. Chen Pingan nodded. The sword repair of the criminal officer's line is very good. Brother Chisho is fine. They are all good brothers who have been in business. I must miss myself very much. Chen Pingan suddenly heard a cold voice behind him. Is the wine good? Probably means, in fact, I want to ask him if he is so troublesome. Is it fun? Do you want to visit the 4 clan cities and 8 hills before you go to Ascension City? Then why don't you just go to Zuandugwan and Sui Chugong to sit for a while? You have many friends anyway. Then when we arrive at Feixing City, sit down in our own restaurant, stroll around in the Summer Palace, and take a look at the Cold Palace again. Xiao Imo has stood up and moved a few steps across. The 2 sword repairmen across the table looked at each other, and then quickly got up. How did Ning Yao come? Then the 2 swordsmen saw that the green shirt lifted 1 foot and turned around and got up again, smiling and reaching out to Ning Yao. Ning Yao raised his brow. What do you mean? Chen Pingan smiled and said, take your heart. Ning Yao glared and said, something's wrong. The 2 sword repairmen, and the city guarding Jianxiu with a wave of imperial swords, were a little dumbfounded. Did this guy drank too much wine from a certain liquor store and drank his brain stupidly, dare to talk to Ning Yao like this? Take 10,000 steps and say, even if Ning Yao doesn't hack you to death, if the second shopkeeper finds out, tsk. Chen Pingan shook his sleeves lightly, removed his blindfold and restored his true face, clasped his fists and smiled. Everyone, it's been a long time. The sword repairman who had thrown away his sword in the air immediately fell to the ground, and everyone clasped his fists and said solemnly, I have seen a hidden official. Regardless of whether Ning Yao is temporarily leading hermit, the 2 of them are a family anyway. Furthermore, no matter how you feel about the young hidden official, whether it is good or bad, everyone has to recognize that he is the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. A city, the sword lights all around in an instant, and at the same time, the lights are lit up in sequence, extremely noisy for a time, and chaotic sounds one after another. The hidden official returned. Really? I'm a wine holder if I lie to you. The second shopkeeper of Gouri, take me in the shop. The second shopkeeper, there are people selling fake wine in Feixing City. You don't care about it. I can help lead the way. I said it a long time ago, the hermit is reluctant to bear our drinks here, there is nothing good in the world, don't leave if you come. Perhaps in the heart of Jianxiu of Feixingcheng, the hidden official of the Great Wall of Jianqi is no longer Xiao Yan, or even Ning Yao, it may have always been the one standing alone at the head of the city, the one who is not human or ghost waving away from the whole Feixing City. The young man in China, the guy named Chen Pingan, is both a foreigner and a native of hometown. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.